Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka. It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka. We are an anime podcast where every 2 weeks we watch an anime and then we discuss it on this podcast like we're in a book club. And then we turn our discussion over to our comment section, to our listeners, to you, to make it better because we're just three idiots. And when I said every 2 weeks, I actually meant 3 weeks for this time. We had personal stuff going on and we needed an extra week. Sorry for the delay.
Yeah.
But if I edit this fast, you won't even know. Anyway, we watched the first half, episodes 1 through 12, of Summertime Rendering, an anime that has been on my wish list for so long, but Disney would not let it come to America. And then they did, and they threw it on Hulu, and I haven't seen a single ad for it. Like, what did you even wait for? I thought Disney was going to be like this whole, we have anime on Disney Plus. But they didn't. They threw it on Hulu in America. I know it's on Disney Plus in other regions, but in America, it's on Hulu. You wouldn't know it if, like, I watch Hulu all the time, and I haven't seen a single ad for it. They did no marketing. Anyway, that's
Disney dropping the ball. What a surprise.
I just because I waited so long, I had to get that complaint out. But we're actually just going to talk about the anime, and to do that, I need the help of my co-host. First off, we have the Laszlo to my Nadja. It's Jeremy. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Laszlo to Nadja. I do not know that one, or at least I can't remember.
Right. I'll explain it after Jason's.
Okay, cool.
I no one's going to get this except for me. So.
Okay. ReZero. I mean, how can I not say ReZero as the anime I think of?
All right. And then that's you liked ReZero?
I mean, absolutely.
It's going to be first time listeners. I need to make sure. All right. Yeah. We also have the Colin Robinson to my Nandor, Jason.
Yeah. Sorry. No. I was also picking ReZero. But I think Jeremy might have been on and I love it, by the way. He might have been picking the time loop aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, you made a fantastic point, Troy. I'm going with it from the monster aspect and how it wasn't just some generic.
Okay. Careful, spoilers though.
Fair.
Because if you read the description of Summertime Rendering, it's a boy who goes back to his island fisherman town because of a death of a friend, and that's like all they give you.
Just blindsides you.
You're meant to go. Aspect. You're meant to go into this blind, so I want to keep it as blind as possible.
To be fair, he said ReZero, and if you haven't seen ReZero by this point and you watch this podcast,
I guess that's true. Right?
That's true. Time loop is also part of it. Spoiler, I guess.
Yeah. All right. And my name is Troy. I'm going to go with Promised Neverland, more for just narrative, unique storytelling in anime. Not robots and powering up, something wickedly original. Mm-hmm. And never got a season 2. So sad for Promised Neverland. Never got a season 2. Would have loved to have seen it.
I wonder what they could have done with that.
Probably for the best, though. All right. The characters that you guys have been referenced to. Apparently, I'm the only one who watches the hit FX show, What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah.
Oh. That's a show?
That's a show?
It's a great show.
Is that the vampires?
The vampire mockumentary.
Oh, I think I watched a couple of little tidbits from that. And yes, very funny.
It's insanely good. The movie's really good too. So it has one of my favorite lines ever, where these vampires run into these werewolves, and everyone just looks human, right? And the werewolves say something mean, they say a curse word, and the lead werewolf goes, "Hey, we're werewolves, not swearwolves."
Oh my god!
I love that so much.
It's like a dad joke across generations, right? They're so old.
if you like Flight of the Conchords, it's a very New Zealand dry humor, actually made by Taika Waititi, famous for
Oh wow.
horror
Okay.
movies. So that dry humor runs rampant through it, and the show is the American chapter, whereas the movie was the British chapter. But they're both very funny, and I love both.
I'm not crying.
Love me some Flight of the Conchords.
Yeah.
Actually, one of them helped. Jermaine is like the co-producer of the show, and he was starred in the movie as well. So very, very much tied into Flight of the Conchords if you like that kind of stuff. All right, summertime rendering. We're gonna try to avoid any more spoilers because again, this is an anime best watched blind.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we are going to give our reviews without any spoilers. If you haven't seen it, you can decide if you want to see it or just let us spoil it in the spoiler section. I'm going to start with you, Jeremy, even though I picked it because I like to go last because I'm cool. So, Jeremy, what did you think?
I really, really liked it. The atmosphere of the anime is great. It keeps hitting you with great twists and things that just come out of left field. I like the characters. It's really good. I highly recommend it, but I do think that it's a bit it earns its R rating. It definitely earns it. So don't watch with kids. Go into it with your adult friends.
All right, Jason, what'd you think?
I mirror a lot of what Jeremy just said because just how unique this whole experience is. The storytelling feels very close to home-ish. Like it's got this like home vibe, and I think they do that on purpose. But also there's just some moments that are just eerie. And like Jeremy said, like the left hooks that you are constantly getting hit with, they feel so good as far as the storytelling narrative. Anything that kind of feels out of place is either feels good at the moment or it's quickly explained. And I'm having like and also this is one of those anime that has me thinking about it while I'm not watching it. And I think that's a really good sign of any story is that can I make my audience think about the concepts afterwards? And so like all week I've just been like, and also a complaint / praise. Each episode ends with a fantastic cliffhanger, but like I've got other things to do, anime.
Yep.
That's true.
But yeah, pick this up if you can.
All right, so I was super hyped going into this, and I really like it, but I don't love it. And I was telling these guys in the pre-show, I feel like something is missing. On paper, I am enthralled with the storyline, but I would be just as enthralled if I read the plot on a Wikipedia article or listened to some dingbat recap it in a podcast. That would get me the same thing. Like, oh, those are really cool plot twists and points. I am into what they are creating here, and it is really cool. The villains are really original and unique. So I really like that. I described it as a soda that's kind of flat. It's still good, but it's not. It's missing something. It's just missing what you're expecting there. I'm at this point. I'm blaming characters and theme because I'm not really connecting with the characters. I'm not really worried about them, even though they're always in dangerous situations, and I'm not finding a lot of theme. But honestly, I'm just kind of using those as a scapegoat. I've been thinking since we started watching this, like, what is it missing? I also know that Ash from Simpin from Senpai, who's guested on our show, and one of our favorite listeners who always follows along, Gamer Dad, hi, have both separately mentioned that they kind of fell behind in watching this. Ash said that he had forgotten that he was watching this and had to go back to it. There was nothing wrong with it, and that's how I feel. Like there's nothing wrong, but I was so hyped, and I might have been overhyped. That's very possible, but I was so hyped that when I watched it, I'm like, not as good as I thought you would be, but it's
Mm.
still really good. I'm gonna come in with a high score at the end, I promise. But I do just gotta call out that I was a little less satisfied than I thought I'd be. But I still think it's definitely worth watching, especially if you love story and the story is brilliant. It really is.
Mhm.
And we're only
I've
12
s-
episodes in, so it could get
Right.
better.
I have some theories for why you feel that way, and we'll get into
Mm.
those later. But
Yeah.
I think I can explain it.
One other thing that I do want to mention as just part of a non-spoilery comment is you mentioned, Troy, how the anime introduces itself in its description, and it kind of almost sounds like a slice of life, right? So I kind of wonder if they're trying to trick the slice of life audience and be like, yeah, you came for a slice of life. Guess what you're getting?
Yeah, because there was
'Cause
I forget.
I would never even pick this up. Like, if I just read the description,
Right.
knowing that that's not my thing, I'd be like, that sounds boring. Okay, bye. But I could imagine somebody on the other side of the spectrum being like, oh man, that's my thing. What is this? you know.
And I know you've said you went in blind. I'm pretty sure, Jason, you
Mhm.
went in blind. And when this had started coming up in topics of like anime this season, it definitely had that feel of like it's not telling you everything. There's definitely something under the surface. I could tell that, but I
Mhm.
purposely tried to stay away from that. And then I did
Mhm.
see Crunchyroll had a clip on YouTube of one of the battles. And I actually thought it was gonna be more about it. It's not a battle anime, but one of the fights. It was in episode 12, one of the ones you watched, and I was like, "That's so bizarre!" Like,
Mhm.
nothing I saw made any sense, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's what I want." Like, I want you have to understand the context, and there's definitely hidden layers under everything that we're being shown.
Yeah.
So I had a little bit of insight, but it mostly was blind. A lot of stuff caught me off guard. Still, and I like that stuff, but like I said, I just I don't,
I kept
care if
hearing
the
the
characters
name.
live.
Yeah, I kept hearing the name come up, and so I was like, okay, I know this must be a good one. And I think I saw part of that trailer, but I turned it off really quick. So I was like, okay, this looks really cool. I'm gonna leave.
All right, before we go to spoiler section, or what? There's no need to announce the next anime. It's this. It's the next. It's the rest. Episode 25. We're just doing 1 through 12 today. But OP and ED, what are your guys' thoughts?
The songs I both like quite a bit. I actually the OP is okay as far as visuals. I'm not sure I like the ending of the OP because I understand what they're getting at. And one thing I do appreciate about it is you never see the hammer drop. So that's
Mm.
it's a little unsettling
Yeah.
to just go into it or like that.
The
So
OP where he puts the gun to his head.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
But the ED, it's funny because we watch a lot of anime with like really dark overturns, and then all of a sudden it goes into this poppy song with like light visuals at the end.
Yes.
I actually really like the surreal, like slow drive around the island. Like it was really, I don't know, a little refreshing. It was nice.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Ha 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 ha.
Ah!
Um, I know it's the morning time. Can't make jokes for Jason. But yeah, no, I absolutely love the music in the outro. It has such cool beats and how it goes off tune. Absolutely love it. Um, it's sort of cathartic after everything that happens in the episodes to just kind of take that sort of panoramic view around the island and relax and listen to that song. So I do really like that, but I kind of wonder if the outro could have had more interesting visuals.
Well, of course.
Yeah, I wonder if I would have liked it more, I guess is what I'm saying. I think I probably would have.
There's
Mhm.
literally zero tells. I mean, very little to
Yeah.
zero tells in either the EP or the OD or OP or ED,
Yeah.
like other anime.
Yeah, and I remember watching the OP like the little childish drawings that are popping up. And I kept pausing it. I'm trying to figure out like what is this? Who are these characters and what is happening in this OP? And I still am not 100% sure. I think
really?
I have some ideas.
I think I figured it out. I'm pretty
you?
sure
Okay.
I know. I think I know what you're looking at is. I have a theory,
Okay.
I guess.
Is it a family?
A film theory. Oh, sorry.
I think it's
Yeah.
the main character's notes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we see a lot of notes and a lot of dates and times and like arrows drawn to remind himself of what's going to happen, and also the process that the monsters use. I think is what those childish drawings are. I think that's the process.
My goodness, I really thought they were drawn by somebody much younger than the main character. But okay.
He's a chef, not an artist.
I guess that's true.
The only thing I want to say from the OP is I also think it's from the visual of one of the creatures, because of the way the light keeps coming in and fading out and blackness is surrounding everything. So I think that's what the OP is actually doing, which is really good. The song is so light that it's almost unsettling once you realize what's going on in the anime. Like, this is way too light for how dark this is. And I kept wondering, like, does it not match, or is it so off that it actually comes back around and works because it makes it unsettling? Like listening to a children's song in like a horror movie, right? Then it makes the children's song suddenly have dark tones and like, oh, don't play the lullaby song. That's when the monster shows up. Something like that. The ending is a live video of the island. And I think video is very important, even though they haven't directly said that, and I don't want to go into spoilers. But
Stop it.
I just want to say it reminds me. I like the song. It reminds me. Do you guys know what like Marble Hornets was? Or there was this time on YouTube where making videos of Slender Man was a big deal, or like Slender Man, where it's basically like most of the video was like just of a tree, and then for like 2 seconds, a creature would like Slender Man would walk by, and that'd be the whole video. You'd watch it for like 10 minutes for like one thing, but it would create this atmosphere of like something is wrong. And every once in a while, in the ending of the island, the video goes a little weird. It turns like red and flashes, and that's the vibe I was getting from it. But I never saw anything actually creepy in it, and I do think they should add just like a hair of something weird just to make it that unsettling, and I think it would have been perfect. That's all I have to say about it.
My favorite one of those was like an 8-minute video, and like 4 minutes in, a figure walks off screen, and you realize, oh, they've been there the whole time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I used to really get into some of those and like follow along with the lore, and I don't know if any of them ever actually ended though. They just went way too long.
Right.
They went to like season 5. Okay, find Slender Man or don't. Just do something.
There's no arc here.
All right. Spoiler time. So we're gonna drop the spoiler warning. Again, I think you'd be fine getting spoiled here, and it'd still be a lot of fun. But
yeah,
I guess it's better to watch the anime. Honestly, I honestly do like the anime, and it's better to go watch the anime. Go watch the anime. But we are going spoilers from here on out. Summertime Rendering, episode 1. We start with our main character, Shinpei, and we're going to talk about him in a second. But he's riding on a ferry back to his home island, which is a small fisherman town. Jeremy, you described him as country bumpkins, and I think that's perfect. It's that kind of small town, right?
Yeah. He's like 7,000 people in the entire place.
Everyone knows everyone. There's one doctor that everyone goes to.
Or was it 700?
I think it was 700.
Yeah, I think it was 700. It was even smaller, yeah. And in the sub, everybody has an accent. Like, they've all got a very drawly, like, bumpkin accent.
Yeah. Which is a bummer that didn't come through in the dub. No one has accents in the dub. And I did dub. Jeremy did sub. Jason.
Which
Okay.
the dub's fantastic. Like, there's only a few moments that I was just like, the sound's a little off there, especially when it comes to the policeman. But no, I thought they did great as far like the voice actress and actors, and also syncing.
Right on.
So on this ferry ride, he's riding with his close friend. Ushio is with him, and she tells him, gives him a gift, tells him he has to find her, and then tells him to watch out for Mio. And then he wakes up,
jumps off the boat, right?
Yes, or flies off. Like,
and
anyway,
also
it's a dream.
Makes the impression that they're alone on it. By the way,
he wakes up from his dream and he falls into. Well, we'll talk about that in a second. Let's talk about Shinpei first.
He falls into another character.
Thoughts of main character Shinpei?
How spoilery are we getting?
We're in the spoiler section, so yeah, we can talk about most stuff.
Stuff we know.
If you feel it's important, drop it.
Okay,
that's the guidelines.
I think they did a fantastic job with quite a few different aspects of this character. One, he's in culinary school, or he just finished culinary school, so he's not an ex-military, or he's not been training in a dojo for the past 20 years, right?
He's not a NEET.
He's just a normal dude coming back for a childhood funeral, right? Like that's really kind of sad, actually. Aspect of this opening scene, but I like the situations that they put him in and his reactions, because he's not the hero all the time. In fact, he fails so much, and it's actually kind of refreshing to see that anime kind of step up that, like, I'm going to do this because it's right, even though I know I'm going to fail. And also, like I said in the opening, like, there's a moment where he is like nearly deadly accurate with a nail gun, which, for one, if you've ever shot a nail gun, you know just how inaccurate they are. But then they explain it. It's like, oh, he'd been practicing like crazy with it. So, and also so we mentioned time loops in the beginning. This character goes through time loops. Question is, do we see every loop that he goes through? Because there's some innuendo throughout made by a couple different characters that he may have gone through more than what he's leading on, but it seems like he writes them all down.
I think we see every time loop he's gone on so far, but I think what it's indicating is that there are future time loops that are going to cross over with past time loops.
Okay.
So that, because there's characters like, you already asked me this, and it never addresses that in these 12 episodes. So there's almost for sure a second, but it also could be the other thing. There's two things going on. We have time loops and doppelgangers, and that can make things confusing. So it could be his doppelganger was asking earlier, or it could be him in another time loop that somehow manages to cross over with previous time loops. We don't know yet.
But I like how wholesome he is, as far as like just being a normal person that's thrown into this situation. So a lot of his reactions seem genuine and not overblown or disproportionately freaking out, right? I also like that he's continually problem solving, and I love this idea of take a moment. What's the bird's eye view? What's the 10,000 foot view? Like, what's the big picture? He's always asking himself that, and I love that kind of problem solving. So, anyways, I really enjoyed this character.
Yeah, I think he's a great character. From my 2 cents on what you were saying earlier is, the moment I saw that he had heterochromia, but in the old picture, he did not.
He did not.
I went, when did you get this other eye color? Like, what happened here? And he had that from the very first loop that we saw him in. So I kind of wonder if there aren't things that happened before.
Well, no, that's the gift.
Introduced. That's the gift she gave him?
Yes, he gets the second eye right here in this dream.
Oh, I totally didn't understand that.
I missed that.
It's her eye. It's the same color as her eye.
Well, I mean, it is the same color as her eye, but it didn't make that never clicked to me that she gave him his eye.
What's bizarre to me
disappears
is
in her
no
hand
one
when she takes it.
no one mentions it.
Huh.
It's a
Uh,
shadow eye. Are you
Yeah,
kidding?
he has a shadow.
Oh
he
yeah,
has
it
a
is.
shadow's
I
eye.
missed that.
Well, they even say it's mother's eye. Why do you have
Yeah, it's
mother's
mother's
eye?
eye. That's why she tried to
Right.
take it back later. Yeah.
But I was confused because no one's mentioning. Like Mio's not looking at him and like, why did your eye color change? But
Yeah.
he, like 3 or 4 episodes in, looks in the mirror and goes, "My eye has a different color." So
I think there is one explanation for that I've been wondering this about like a lot of the things that he's seeing, right? He sees all of these silhouettes where people were burned away. Nobody else comments on those silhouettes.
Yeah.
Nobody really talks about them.
Some people do. Or
I
the
guess
shadows
maybe
do.
Yeah, shadows do, and I don't know, maybe Rinosuke. No, I don't even think Rinosuke did. The only time I'm thinking of where one person may have commented on it was inside the sewers. And I think it was him. But I could be misremembering. I'm sure we'll get to
his
it.
friend sees it too.
His friend
No.
sees it?
Yeah,
No,
I'm pretty sure.
and not
pretty sure Sal sees it.
Nagamo mentions it
Sure.
when they're on the steps and she looks down. She's like, wow, that's a lot of people that they got.
Okay. Because the reason I was thinking that is for a long time, he's the only one that sees things like this. And so I wondered if that eye was allowing him to see things that a human eye can't. And so that would make sense why when he looks in the mirror, he sees that eye and nobody else notices it because only he can see it. But who knows? It sounds like maybe that's a little bit off. But I really like the character. I like what they're doing with him because he has enough similarities to Subaru. Like there's actually some similarities in his reaction when he figures out he's looping and his tenacity and willingness to kill himself if he has to in order to loop again and scream out things like I'm going to come back as many times as I have to win. And, you know, I got a lot of Subaru vibes from those during the times that Subaru was actually becoming a compelling character. And so I did like him, especially, you know, in those moments. It was really cool to see. But I was always looking for how he differentiated himself and how this show in general differentiates itself from like ReZero and how it's following in a lot of the same steps. And he, I think, is a significantly different character, especially in the sense like you're saying, Jason, where he's like, step back. I'm more reserved, more going to think about these things. And he's also like talking to us, which is kind of weird. I don't know if he's talking to us or just we're like intercepting him talking to himself at times, because I know later he is talking to himself, especially when he says take a step back and think. But there's times when he relates what's going on in an almost narrative way, which you would expect to see like if you were reading a book or something or a manga. But it's very uncommon to see a character explain what's going on to the audience in an anime. So that was kind of weird. But yeah, but overall, I liked him.
I do like the character Shinpei, especially for what Jason had mentioned, that he's just a guy. He's not the chosen one. He's not. He's not a martial arts master. He's not the strongest kid at his school who's won every fight, and now he's ready to go win the God of High School tournament. I'm watching God of High School. It's not very good. I watch it anyway. The Shinpei's, what I'm missing from him is that he's a little dry, and I think what I really need is he doesn't have like this major flaw that needs to be overcome by the end of the story that I'm seeing. Again, we are 12 episodes in. I could be way off. He just doesn't really have. I'm not seeing an arc. And he's also not the kind of character who's helping other characters go through arcs. There's not really arcs happening. This is really, everything is really focused on the events of the story, which again, I love the story. The characters are just kind of there so far. And I feel like I need a little bit more from him to really care. Again, there's nothing wrong with him. I don't dislike him, and I do love that he's an everyman. but this is storytelling, and flawed characters are part of that. And I guess I'm missing that from him.
I do think that's fair. This is definitely not, at least so far, an anime about any characters changing or overcoming anything internally. It is entirely about overcoming the threat from the outside.
Right.
100%.
But even like in a horror movie, I mean, depending on how good the horror movie is, but usually the main character like has a flaw, then has to overcome that to just survive the horror movie.
I guess you could say maybe there is. I see some potential arcs between him and Ushio, and between him and Mio. Like the relationship is just there's something wrong with the relationship between him and his stepsisters, his adoptive sisters, right? And
what context are we using the word wrong here?
I don't mean in the
Step
traditional.
bro, I'm stuck in the sewer.
Yeah, senpai. I don't mean in the traditional anime sense. I mean in just the way that they communicate with each other, and like there were even some times where I was wondering if Mio killed Ushio just because of the fury, you know. And so I kind of wonder if maybe there's some flaws and personality issues that have been hinted at but haven't actually been exposed fully, that might get exposed in this latter half and then resolved, maybe. But at least for now, yeah, I agree with you. There's nobody with a real arc that I'm seeing.
The one thing Shinpei is fighting with, I think, and you get a couple flashes of it, is his conflation with Ushio and her shadow. And even though they've teamed up and he treats her very much the same, he's constantly battling with, well, the Ushio I grew up with is dead, and there's nothing I can do about it. How am I going to deal with this thing that's presenting itself as Ushio? And he even makes the comment that, like, from every other metric you would judge a human by, she exudes that. So what's the difference? And I think that internal battle is kind of what's going on in the background for him. But you're right, Troy. There's not a big, he, has to drink, or, he's, or he always pushes people away. Like, there's nothing like that that's going on.
I like something like, I don't think I'm the guy who can save the day, so I always pass the responsibility on to someone else. No, he jumps into to take the hero role if he needs to, but he doesn't have to be there. He's just not. He doesn't have that big flaw we need to overcome that I've seen. I'm sure. I'm sure. It's
but
there.
does every story need it? That's my question.
Yes, sir.
If you're asking the question from the perspective of someone who is arguing that they don't, I actually agree with that. I don't think that they all need it. I think that a story can be compelling even if all you're doing is focusing on surmounting some obstacle. I think it does help. Like, it adds an extra layer of complexity. But if we're just dealing with the mechanics and technicality of how you resolve this issue, and that's compelling enough.
But that's what he's doing. He's resolving the issue of the island.
Yeah, then that's, to me, I find that to be enough. But
yeah, Jeremy doesn't care about character arcs.
Not really.
Yeah.
they're like,
which is fine.
They're like frosting, right? Like
it's not fine, Dean. What are you talking about?
Well, that's always been a major dichotomy between me and Jeremy. Is this is perfect for Jeremy because it is so story focused, and like the details are carefully crafted, and there's a story to go through. But I'm like, why do I care that Shinpei's going through this story?
He's gonna die, man.
It's not only my role on the podcast; it is who I am. I'm here for the emotional resonance that comes off a story, no matter how it got from A to B.
Yeah.
My biggest issue with this show is not one time was I hyped, and there are moments I should have been. There are great story beats, but I never got hyped. Yet.
There's something wrong with you.
In episode 12, I should have been hyped, and I wasn't.
I
got
am.
hyped. I got
I am
shivers. in
so
episode
excited
12.
for 13.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Or the festival. Oh my! Especially at the end of the festival, I was just I so hyped. Like, oh man, we have to see what goes on. Like,
I
what
want to
is
see what's going to happen. I guess to me, like being fascinated by the story and being hyped because of emotional resonance are two different things. The story can really suck, and then you play, you say "run" in the background, and I'm like, "Let's go!"
So it's a soundtrack issue. Troy hates the soundtrack of this anime.
No. You mentioned something good, because that's something that I've always complained about. Now that I'm thinking about it, is that really strong characters that resonate emotionally well with Troy. I couldn't stand those characters and those stories because they weren't engaging or compelling in a storytelling way. But Troy loved those characters so much because of the storytelling surrounding how they would react to these situations. That just doesn't resonate with me. That's funny.
Yeah. I'd say I'm kind of in the middle there. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. If it's like an AI figuring out what reality is, I'm totally there. Give me that emotion any day.
All right, we're gonna, just like Shinpei jumps out of his dream, we're gonna jump back into the story and land face first in a giant pair of boobs. Because that's what happens. He wakes from his dream and he's in a major character who we're not gonna talk about till they're formally introduced.
G cup, not H.
Yeah, she'll be pissed.
They call her Miss H Cup. I called her the slap lady in my notes for most of the time. And I do want to, well, I'll say that when we get to her. All right. But this is my first action. This is a real complaint I had. It really bothered. I think I even tweeted it. The anime tropish stuff it does, especially with stuff like this and panty shots.
Yeah.
Way are off the emotional horror suspense theme we're going for. It is bizarre to me that in a story where he is going to a childhood friend's funeral, we're dealing with
you get a panty flash,
death and murder. We're also getting boob grabs and panty flashes, and I'm like, this anime is so good at being original, and yet it felt it had to do some of those anime tropes I hate, and I don't know why. I feel like it just has no place here. It wasn't needed. You're good by your own. You don't need to. And this isn't for mature audiences. Like, you don't need this 14-year-old stuff in your anime.
Yeah, it's got an R rating, so your demographic, your targeting is definitely older.
Right.
Yeah. It is weird. There's certainly, like, I don't know if this goes back to the OP and how the OP almost has a sort of dissonance where you get that music that's a little bit too off tune for what we're dealing with here. It doesn't keep that moaning, wailing, screaming metal intro. It immediately jumps into like this beboppy thing. And it's kind of the same way in how the story has, and it has multiple scenes spread throughout. They're just interspersed in there where, you know, the awkward moments between him and his sisters, which they aren't too bad. There's only a few, but they are there. And
they do get less.
As
the story gets more focused.
But it's almost like the anime is doing these token trope additions. Like, well, we got to do this because this is how stories are told in this medium. So here you go. Now moving on to the story we really want to tell. You know, kind of feels like that.
The scene where he has to check on his sister in the bath, and the only way he can do that is to fling open the door and accidentally see her naked and not knock and just say, "Are you okay?"
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of. And even with the excuse later where there was a sort of after the fact justification of, well, you know, I wasn't sure if it was her or her shadow or was she there or not. It's like, you didn't do anything to check and prove that she wasn't a shadow in there. Like, you don't.
There's no way you thought she was dressed in there either.
Right. But I mean, like, even if it was an emergency, like, let's just for a moment consider that it was an emergency and you had to leap in there. You know, let's say the story justified it, which it did not. But let's say it did. You still didn't do anything to prove what you needed to find out. that was totally token. That's all it was.
Yes. And now he's an adult, technically, like 18, 19. because he went to culinary school and has come back. Like he's done with school.
I got the impression he's like
Mio's
just out
still
of
in
high
school. Yeah.
Or in top of high school. Let me look really quick.
All right, I'm gonna keep going with the story while you look it up because he gets off the ferry. We learn about the island a little bit.
He's 17.
It's only 17, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
One of
It's
his
anime.
first traits that's presented is accidental pervert. It's like, okay.
Isn't that just male?
So we should explain. So he's here for his sister's funeral, childhood friend,
Stepsister.
love interest.
Yeah.
If you're adopted, it's still step, right? So
Yes.
so basically
Is
his
it?
family died and he was taken care of by this other family, and the two sisters of that family he was raised with. We're gonna find out one of the reasons he left is because he cares about one of them and wanted to break the familial bonds so that maybe someday he could have romantic bonds. But so that's the one he's there for the funeral of, and then the other sister, Mio, shows up, and she comes down on her bike and isn't able to stop and flies off the dock into the water, and then this is when we get a panty shot. So again, it was two scenes back to back, and I was like, what is happening? That's not what I'm here for.
Are you setting this tone for this anime?
Yeah. And then they walk to go get her changed and then go to the funeral. So this is our introduction to Mio. Your guys' thoughts on Mio?
I think it's just because we have a lot of time with her in the first couple episodes that we get a bit of attachment to her, but not much. But like she's just kind of an every girl's girl. You know, she works at the diner. She's got a crush on her stepbrother.
Of course she does.
Right. But one thing was a little odd is about halfway through this first half of the season, she is just completely sidelined as a side character. And I get why, like the anime does a good job of justifying it. But near the end, where it really comes down to, hey, I've got this precious person to you, you kind of don't care about her anymore. And I have some good reasons for why audiences may feel that way, especially like you, Troy. I don't know if you do or not. I just assume you just don't care what happens to her. But
yeah, you're right.
That's the problem, right? Because they just kind of abandon her, and then they give her a couple scenes here and there to remind you that, oh yeah, Mio exists. And then it culminates in this ending scene, and it's like the impact of what happens to her is just not as impactful as I thought it could be. So she's almost a background character, let alone side character.
Yeah. I mean, she shifts from that, especially because Mio, you can't really separate Mio from her doppelganger, right? So if you think of Mio, you also have like this evil aspect of her. At least I do. And so to me, she's a really engaging character for the first half of this set of 12 episodes. But then I guess I'll call it an Achilles heel, right? Once the villain is dealt with a little bit, the doppelganger is dealt with a little bit, then Mio just kind of becomes lesser of a priority. And yeah, I kind of think that not caring as much about her and potentially some of the other characters is just, that comes with it being a looping anime too. Like, I think it's harder if you're in a looping anime and you know, hey, we're only 7 episodes in a 24 or 25 episode season. A lot of people are going to have to die. We're going to have to restart loops. So, right. You know, it's not really going to hit me as hard when they die. I don't know if you can get away from that. And I'm sure that's not all of it, but I think that's a part of it.
It's definitely a thought I've been having, is like, one of the reasons I'm not worried about them dying is because I know there's a time loop.
Mm-hmm.
So I've kept coming back to ReZero.
Right.
And I mean, I do care. I've definitely cared more during ReZero than this.
And
I
that's
do
their
wanna say-
character arcs. I can see where you're going with that.
And
Yeah.
Subaru has some flaws.
Mhm.
Also, I do want to say I like this better than Higurashi When They Cry, because those are the 3 big time loops, especially that we've done. I know there's more than that, but Higurashi is another one where on paper I really find it interesting, and then when I watched it, I was like, it's kind of just better on paper.
I don't want to see her rifling around in her stomach.
Yeah, and I also appreciate this one is not as gory or maybe even torture porn levels that Higurashi was. So I like this a lot better than Higurashi. ReZero is definitely better than this.
Mhm.
I do want to say that Mio is the rem to Ushio's Amelia. Boom, baby!
You know, I can't disagree with that. I can't. Yeah.
Yeah, because she's a terrible character.
Oh, shots fired.
No. Shots fired now.
I think one thing Mio does is she sets up the mystery of what's going on. And then once the mystery is exposed, she's sidelined. And so I think that's the problem.
100% agree. And actually, Jeremy, you said this earlier. I agree. I thought Mio was the killer. I thought that's where we were going in the beginning, and that she was psychotic and had gone crazy and murdered her own sister. And I was like, that's fascinating. She's an awesome character. And then she's like, no, that's not it at all. And I'm like, you were boring as heck.
Exactly.
You're no longer interesting at all. I care more about when your shadow's on screen than you. It's another character that just kind of fell flat, who was, because like you said, was attached to the mystery and the danger of what's going on, was interesting when she was on screen, but the character it's herself is like, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. So they go to the funeral. And this is where we learn that Shinpei was raised by this family. And while they're walking around the funeral, someone takes a picture with flash photography. We just hear the flash go off. And everyone's like, who would do that? That's so tacky. That's so weird. But we never see anyone with a camera. That's important, lady. And we're going to talk about that and more when we fully get introduced to them. We've mentioned the shadows already. We'll talk about, we definitely need to give the shadows their time, but we're not there yet. That'll happen.
Okay, so now it's bugging me now that you mentioned it, because we'll get into it later when we
Okay.
Because there's a sparkle effect that we don't see.
Yeah, it's true.
We learn that Ushio drowned while trying to save a little girl in the ocean named Shiori, and Shiori's there at the funeral, and she has not spoken since the drowning.
She's also got bad guy dead eyes.
Yeah.
Or traumatized eyes. I thought she was just in shock and traumatized. I thought
she was a walking corpse.
Yeah, I did too. She looked evil. Just pure evil.
Those like dead, like dark eyes. That's usually in anime. That's usually the sign of a corpse.
Yeah.
Shinpei also runs into his best friend from the island, whose name is Sao.
Yeah.
Sao.
So.
Who I put on our list of characters to talk about begrudgingly, because he what do you guys think of him?
I'm not sure what he adds except for exposition. Yeah.
I feel like he's going to be bigger.
Yeah. I kind of like him just because you have a character here who is having their own struggles, right? Like he's the kid that is infatuated with Mio, and he really wants her attention. But you see him actually go as far as taking an axe to the back of the head. I mean, like, in order to prove his devotion and all that, right? Like, there's some interesting scenes with him where even just the way that he converses with Shinpei, like, he's the hot-headed, gonna get things done. He's kind of a I don't know. In some ways, I wanted to say he's a foil to Shinpei, but not really. He's just a different character, like an antithesis to Shinpei. He wants to move forward, always wants to take action. But I do think that the fact that they let him be so reasonable, so that when Shinpei does sit down and like he'll listen to the whole story instead, I think that kind of hurts him. I think it would have been a better decision to let him be more different, consistently different from Shinpei.
I disagree.
Oh, you like it?
It's such a trope, and I'm so tired of seeing it that someone goes, "Hey, I'm going to explain the exact thing that's going to happening, and I have proof of it." No, I'm not listening to it. Rah, rah, rah. Like, I'm so tired of that. That is in every anime.
Well,
to have the hothead sit down and go, "You know what? I think you're right. I'm on your side." That was so refreshing. Let's get on with the story.
But then it caused you to say that he doesn't add anything to the anime.
I didn't. No, I said he was an exposition character. I didn't say he didn't add anything. He doesn't get enough screen time until the end of the that. Like, why do I care about this random character that's there for just a couple minutes? And then if he was combative, I would have hated him more.
Was that you, Troy, that said he didn't add anything?
So
No, because I heard someone say that.
I agreed.
Okay,
it came out of Jason's mouth.
That's what I thought.
I didn't say he didn't add anything. I just said that he was an exposition character.
Rewind the podcast.
Rewind. Yes, you did.
1 minute earlier.
I'm not sure what he adds except for
Thank you.
exposition.
And now we resume the podcast.
Okay, if I
But-
did say that, that's not what I meant. Then I apologize.
Okay. Well, if you're arguing that he's purely exposition, I would say that being purely exposition by its nature is just kind of an annoying, pathetic character. Like, if that's all you're going to do, if that's your only thing that you add as value,
Strong words.
that I mean, honestly, it is. Like, is there any other way to say that they're useless? Because that's just a way to camouflage bad writing, isn't it? Isn't that what an exposition dump character is?
Name a story or video that doesn't have someone where they're giving exposition to. I'm not saying he's a great character, but I mean, to call him pathetic and doesn't matter is a little much.
Well, I'm saying if that is his sole purpose, is to give exposition, then that's not a character. That's just a hollow exposition dump. So I don't know. Well, all I'm trying to say is, like, if that's the value, I actually think that's not very much that he's bringing to the table. Like, that's just camouflage for bad writing, if that's the only thing he's bringing to the table.
If a character is only there to provide exposition, then yes, that is bad writing and a bad character. So every story does need to provide exposition, and usually has a character that is mostly there for exposition. But I don't think so. That's his only purpose. I mean, I honestly think he's going to be fixed. I think right now he's pretty bland.
Mhm.
And that might be better. Like, I agree with Jason. I'm glad he's not just the trope best friend hothead who's in every single anime, but he's also very much like Shinpei, just a regular dude.
That's the part I have an issue with. Yeah. Like, if he's too much like Shinpei,
right,
then we find him kind of boring because Shinpei's already filling that role.
See, the thing is, I agree with both of you, which doesn't leave a middle ground for fixing it. Because
I know
I don't want another tropey best friend,
right,
who's in every anime, but also he's not standing out in any way at all
until episode 11 and 12.
And when we find out his family's involved.
Yeah.
But really, his family's what interesting, and
yeah,
he's
he
connected
still
to.
didn't change.
No, but he's
going to make him interesting.
He's getting the
Yeah.
short end of the stick, which I think is going to make his character into something more.
Right.
And also, I think his major, I guess, flaw at this moment is that he 100% blames himself for Ushio's death.
Yeah, because
I
he was
just-
the only one that was there, like the guy that was there. So he's gonna hold himself responsible.
So my feelings with Sour are like with most of them. Like, there's nothing wrong with him,
Mhm.
but he's just not awesome enough for me to care about at this point. He's a good guy. I got no problems with him,
Mhm.
but I also got no problems when he dies. Like, oh, okay, bye, Sal. We'll see you in the next loop.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
When Ushio gets hurt, I cared. And like Ushio is one of the characters I really did like. There's two characters I really like, Ushio and Nagumo. When those two characters get hurt, even though it's in a time loop, I still care. When Sao took the axe to the back of the head from Sao, I was like, dang. All right, who's next?
What a way to go. Yeah.
What's up with this forearm shadow guy? Tell me more about him. Moving on. The same way with Mio. Like, oh, Mio got crushed. What a shame. What's going on with your eye, man?
See, I didn't. I only cared about Ushio and Shinpei. I keep wanting to call him Senpai, but Shinpei. Only cared about those two, and I think it's entirely because the two of them are going to persist.
I think it's by design as well.
Yeah. Well, and that would be really interesting because if it's by design, then hopefully they have something in mind that will like switch it all up in the next 13 episodes.
Well, I think Arms really made a great point where it was like,
can't shorten it, man.
You can't shorten. We haven't even introduced the character. No one's gonna get it. What's an Arms?
well, that's the reason I was being obtuse. Anyways, he makes the point of like, hey, all we have to do is just keep you alive, right? And I win.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that was compelling. Unfortunately, they didn't lean enough into it during these first 12 episodes.
What? I disagree. I think it's a brilliant choice, and I think they did it perfectly. I think it's one of the best things about this anime.
I'm saying it's a great choice. I'm saying I wish they leaned into it more and extended it, because that point only lasted for a few seconds and then they resolve it and they loop. Like if they had spent like an entire episode of like just fighting him to keep him alive, I thought that would have been very compelling.
I think it's only going to get bigger. I think it's perfect the way it is. It's how you fix the time loop, because the time loop problem, we talked about this. I remember we talked about this the first time we watched ReZero. Like, how do you make it so the character's not like, ooh, should have started with the left foot, bang. All right, this time left foot. Like, how do you keep death consequential? Well, you can't really. So instead, you flip it. You make death consequential for the villains, and they are aware of the time loop. And now your battle is, how do I get myself dead in time,
right,
before the villains can stop me?
Or my checkpoint gets updated. I like that a lot. That's an early thing they did in this one, opposed to ReZero.
The fact that the time loop is shortening every time he does it, and the villains are fully aware of the time loop and are actively trying to stop him from time looping. Because if he doesn't time loop by the time their plan goes off, they win anyway.
Right.
So he won't be able to stop him.
Mm-hmm.
That's genius. It completely negates any issues the time loop creates in the story. And I've never seen that before, where the villains are like, no, keep him alive.
Yeah.
He's time looping. Yeah. We're fully aware of it, and he's
gonna ruin our plans.
It's the opposite of everything, right? Like, okay, I gotta die. No, save him. We're the villain. Save him.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love that.
Yep.
On paper.
Oh, you son.
All right. Okay, so then we see him back at home. He's cooking dinner for his family. Now his adoptive father is also a cook, runs a cafe that he's worked at, but he went off to become like a chef. But they're excited for his curry. I mean, it's a big deal that his family loves his curry. He makes the curry even better than his father, showing that like he's got a lot of potential as a cook.
Mm-hmm. He'll be the next contestant in Food Wars.
And then this is where we see the town sheriff cop riding by on his bicycle, and he sees Mio outside the house. He's like, "What's up with Mio?" I need to ask you, Jeremy, because even though I watched in English, I had the subtitles turned on because that's just how I watch everything now. Subtitles always. Did the subtitles ever spoil who was a shadow for you?
No.
Because they did something that I actually copied in my notes, is that they add an H to the end of the name whenever a shadow is talking.
Oh, human.
No, when it's a shadow. Like, so Mio is M-I-O, and then when it's the shadow Mio, it's M-I-O-H. which is great because it doesn't change the pronunciation. If you notice, everyone's character ends with a vowel so that they can just add an H on the end and nobody's name is changed if you say it.
Shinpei.
Right. Shinpei, Mio, Sao, Ushio, Nagumo.
Yeah.
You can put an H on all of those and you're fine. Shiori.
Well, now you're making me wonder if I just missed it. Because I never noticed.
I don't
it could have happened.
remember being spoiled, but when I got to the end, I was like, man, oh, there was one. It was the nurse. It literally said Shadow and her name, and we hadn't met the nurse, so it wasn't a big deal that it was spoiled. But I didn't realize the nurse was a Shadow, but it literally said Shadow. But yeah, whenever Shadow Mio was talking, it would say Mioh. That's why in your show notes, Ushio's name to talk about has a giant H on the end, because we're going to be talking about Shadow Ushio. That's how the English subtitles. They were subtitles for the English dub. They weren't the English translations.
That's
Anyway.
interesting.
I just had to ask that. Okay, we'll come back to Shadows, I promise. His sister, who's still inside, we don't see the sister that's outside anymore. Also, I didn't even notice she's in a different outfit. She's in her school clothes.
Yeah.
The Mio inside gives him the necklace, and he calls Sao, and he finds out like Ushio had strangulation marks around her neck that are weird. They still ruled it as a drowning, and they just kind of nobody looked into it.
Mm-hmm.
and then Mio hands him the necklace, and this is when I'm like, oh, Mio's the killer. She strangled her with the necklace,
Yeah.
and then took the necklace and gave it to him. She's a psychopath. 100% Mio's the killer.
Here, this is from my sister.
But she does mention that she thinks someone hurt Ushio. The next day, he's helping with the cafe, and then one of the customers was like, "Hey, did you find the big boob woman you were looking for?" Which is the slap lady, who he's not looking for, and he's like, "What? I don't know what you're talking about." And this is the first indication that I thought, okay, time loop, but repeating time loop, but it must be a Shadow Ushio at this point.
Well, the thing that was so funny to me was like in the foreground, Mio is standing there like serving food and everything. And as soon as the guy says, you asked about the lady with the big rack, Mio's like, oh. She's very upset that she doesn't have a big rack. That cracked me up because it was early enough in the show that we didn't really know that it was going to be a serious horror show.
Right.
It was still like slice of lifey. And so the comedy worked really well at that point. But yeah, I was wondering about this later as well. I was like, wait a minute.
The sheriff, Tetsu, comes in, and he mentions that the Kobakawa family, which is Shiori's family, has completely disappeared. Mio gets scared and runs out. When he goes and talks to her, he mentions that Shiori had seen a doppelganger, a shadow of herself. And then an old fisherman guy named Nezu walks by, and he's like, "Oh yeah, the island has shadow sickness. You got to watch out for the shadows." and then Mio's like, "Oh yeah, Ushio also saw her shadow, and then she died, and now Shiori's missing, and I'm really worried." And the fisherman had mentioned a shrine, so they go up to the shrine, and they see someone in the woods, and they hear a gunshot, so they run off into the woods, and they find big boob lady dying of a gunshot. Mio appears with a gun with another Mio, kills the Mio, and then kills Nagumo, kills Mio, and then kills Shinpei. And then Shinpei wakes up back on the ferry, back in the boobs of the lady. And this is the end of the first time loop and the first episode.
So something that occurred to me, again, this show has had me thinking a lot. And I think this also lends to, like you mentioned, the time looping and not really caring about these characters because we can just always reset them. I hated that everyone died in the first episode of Dandy, but I wasn't bothered here. And I'm wondering if it's just because I have a bias against pompadours. But
to be fair, Dandy doesn't explain it. Dandy's just like, next episode, screw you.
Maybe that's it. Maybe I care a lot about the story and I lean more towards story than I do characters.
Well, and the character is aware he time looped.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, it's part of the plot thread. With Danny, it just restarts, and no one's even seems to notice
exactly
the universe
Yeah.
ended.
Yeah.
But right here, Shinpei believes that he's dreaming.
Had a dream.
Right. But I do love the effect of horrific scene reset. And
Mhm.
he's just like, and I think they did a really good job with this.
Mhm. When Mio came out of the woods holding the gun, like, I genuinely wasn't sure. Okay, so I already thought Mio was bad, right?
Yep,
And
yep.
so
I was with you. Mio's the killer for sure
Yeah.
at this point.
And so when we see that Nagumo takes a gunshot to the side of the head from something off screen, and right when she's saying, "Be careful," she's like, she pulls Shinpei close, and she's trying to whisper a warning to him about a her, and then takes a gunshot, and I'm like, it's Mio. Mio's killing him. And then the camera panned over, and for some reason I have this memory that it was just Doppelganger Mia at first, and then the camera like moved and showed that Doppelganger Mia had the other Mia, but I'm doubting myself, because I genuinely thought Mio killed her and was like, yeah, it was really well done. I was super confused, and I loved it.
Yeah. It's not till later that I even realized that the Mio standing outside was a second Mio. I was like, why did Mio go outside and stare at her house and then go back inside and take a bath?
Yeah,
Same here.
yeah, exactly.
It wasn't until the second time loop when I was like, oh, yeah, two Mios. That makes more sense.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I mean, she was holding the other Mio and shot her in the head at the end of episode 1. But yeah.
He gets slapped again, falling into the boobs. Nagumo, this is Nagumo. We will talk about her later. She's like, it sounds like you were having a nightmare. And he's like, oh, it's because I was reading this book. And he holds up this book, which is ironic because it's her book, but he doesn't know that. And then he gets off the boat. Mio shows up. She crashes in the water. This time he notices her brake line has been cut, which had to have been by Shadow Mio, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which also flips this scene from comedic panty shot to attempted murder. And I'm like, oh,
I like that.
I still don't like the panty shot, but I like where this is going.
Yeah.
Makes me even madder when they validate the panty shot. Like, he needed to know the color of her panties so that he could ask her about her earlier panties, so he knew when she got copied.
Okay.
It's just like, come on.
So
could have done a hair clip.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a devil's advocate for just a moment here. Like,
of course you would for the panties.
You bet I would. So this is anime. Anime has tropes. You know what you expect when you're getting into anime, right? And the way
like
this
brother
anime
sister relationships.
Yeah, right. You haven't watched the right anime then. So you know what you're expecting when you get into it, especially when the anime itself doesn't give you a hint that it's more than just a slice of life, right? And I mean, if you don't look at like rating and genre and tags and stuff, and so I like the fact that it was really like turning into that corner, right? It wanted to present to you that false idea that this is just a silly anime the first time when she did her panty shot, right? When she flew over the bike. Like, you would see that in a slice of life anime. It's comedic, it's stupid, it's silly, and it's what you would expect. So I kind of like that they did that, and the fact that they progressed away from that throughout the story kind of to me says that that was an intentional misleading to give you the sense of safety and comfort that this is what you expected, and then oh wait, no, it's not. Everybody's dying, and this was actually sinister. Someone cut her brakes, and
that's a good devil's advocate. I think I actually have to give you that one. If you go into this completely blind, which based on the description, it definitely wants you to, because it does not tell you anything about time loops or shadows. It's just like, hey, guy goes back for his family's funeral.
Ha ha boobs, ha ha panties.
Yeah, and the picture is just the main character standing around. One's in a swimsuit.
Yeah.
I could see that. I could see them trying to play everything really close to the vest, even once the anime has started.
I can see that.
And then later, when they're like, all right, now how do we justify this? I know, let's make it a mystery point. Like he has to remember her panty color. That's important to understand things. That's how we, wrap it all together.
And then the big boobs are so that it's easy to describe her when he's looking for her in the
That's
town.
right. See?
And
Everything.
speaking of, I did just notice that Nagamo's hair is down on the boat. I wonder what
Mhm.
would have happened if it was up.
Probably wouldn't have cared as much. Probably would have just laughed.
Or
dodged.
instead of a punch, a slap,
sledgehammer.
instead it would have been a punch.
Could have been. I think he would have dodged. He's got
Yeah,
that
he would have been able to
Yeah,
dodge.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, fair.
All right. He goes to the funeral, and this is when he realizes this isn't just a dream, or it hadn't just been a dream that was very eerily similar to what really happened. I am time looping, which I'm glad we got it out of the way. Man, I hate when people go through like 3 time loops before they realize they're time loops. Except for
Oh,
Dandy,
dude.
where they went through 136 time loops to
Right.
figure it out. That's still the
Mhm.
best version yet. But
Yeah.
I love a good time loop story. I do not love a good.
They
Let's
still
take
didn't
forever
get
to
it.
figure it out.
They still didn't. Nope. Danny's best.
So that night after the funeral and he's at home, he starts freaking out a little bit and he runs outside, which means he accidentally sees the Mio and the sheriff. So Shadow Mio and the sheriff come across her, and so he's out of sight from them. And Shadow Mio kills the sheriff, stabs him to death, and then we see
Zero hesitation.
the
That was
flash.
crazy.
We learn what the flash is. The flash is literally copying the person, and then a shadow thing comes out of her,
Yep.
absorbs the sheriff, and then turns into the sheriff.
Eats him.
Mm-hmm.
The body just like disappears in a blink.
Yeah.
It's not.
that-
It's more like
No,
they're
no,
being
that's-
deleted than. I know
That's
it's
how they eat.
eating,
Yeah.
absorbing,
like a-
deleting.
It's like they're atomizing it, vaporizing it, but it leaves behind burn marks.
Yeah,
on the
I
ground,
guess
yeah.
I don't want to give the impression that like it's covered up and consumed. It's literally just
Right.
a snap of the fingers and the body is gone and there's a shadow on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important for context later.
That's true.
It is, but I'm using the term delete because of my own theory about what's going on here.
Well,
Tying
and
it back
they-
into the video.
They mention it's not about nutrients; it's about data. So
Right.
you're absolutely right.
All right. However, they notice him and they murder him.
Notice me, senpai. Oh no, not that noticing.
Not like this. Wait, what color panties do you have? I need this information for later.
Yeah, he sees her panties. In
Also-
this scene.
Also, we realize that if this moment happens, that's how Mio gets a gun.
Yes.
Sheriff gives her a gun.
Because if they don't meet, she doesn't get a weapon.
She still has the butcher knife.
Well, she has a knife, but she doesn't get a gun.
Yeah, exactly.
So Shinpei time loops again. However, this time he's not on the ferry; he's on the dock, so he's a few moments forward from.
So
when
no
he
more
last-
boob.
So no more falling into the boob. And this time he jumps in front of Mio's bike, and she slams into him, and he goes flying into the water, but he can't swim, so she jumps in and saves him.
You grow up on an island and you can't swim? I don't understand that. Especially because they're like next to the docks on the beach. I don't believe that. I don't like that writing.
You want to bet his family drowned and that he was afraid of the water?
Okay, that would be a more interesting justification, but I thought they died in a burning house.
Did they die in a burning house? I made that up about them drowning. I figured.
Oh, okay.
If I was writing it, that's how I would do it to explain why my
Yeah.
character didn't swim.
Mhm.
I stay out of the water because that's where my parents died. But
Trauma. I could
Yeah.
see that.
okay, then yes, he should be able to swim. You live on an island, learn how to freaking swim.
Yeah.
A little cold.
Everyone should swim, but if you're around water on a regular basis, you have no reason not to. It's literally 70% of this planet is covered in water. You need to know how to not die as soon as you enter it.
Exactly.
I feel like that's just to be basic survival techniques.
Yeah.
Unless you're in Australia, then everything's there to eat you.
That's true.
All right. Okay, so after They go to the funeral. The slapping woman, we see her making a recording on her phone, talking to
Upside down
likes to hang upside down.
because she's related to Batman.
I think, yeah. Okay.
I liked it. See, no, that's the kind of
It's wrong though. Like having the blood flow into your brain like that. That is not a helpful thing. That will actually knock you out over time.
yeah. But I like having a character with a quirk so that they're interesting.
Yeah. I
What-
think
what
it's just a way to let her cleavage hang out. I'm pretty sure that's all it was.
What are you
All
trying
right.
to say about Shinbei?
Shinpei fakes a call to the sheriff so that he won't come by the house, and then he sets out his phone recording to get a video of Mio. Then we get
I genuinely did not think it would record her. I thought she's like a vampire, basically.
What I liked is how offended she was that she was recorded, and not the fact that they had proof of her existence,
No.
just the fact that they used a recording device on her, which I think leads into the other story. But I did like that.
I like that. It's
How
like it's a
dare you.
violation.
Yeah,
I like that.
Okay, this is also when he notices his right eye has changed color. This is actually when he mentions it. This is also when he walks in on his sister bathing. And then he shows her the video in the morning to show that, hey, we are dealing with shadows and doppelgangers.
I'm not just a pervert. Justification.
And then that morning he goes to check on Shiori and her family. Him and a neighbor lady go into the house and it's empty. He finds the shadow spots on the ground, meaning people have been killed by shadows here. He wanders upstairs alone, and like the hallway behind him is pure black. And then you hear there's the flash and you hear the sound. Guys, the sound design on the Flash is so good.
Mm-hmm.
there was no background noise. There was no music.
Right.
It's just him standing up there. You hear a little bit of wood creaking, and then all of a sudden, yeah, you hear the flash. It's like
They did a great job by introducing it in the funeral and us being like, what? Okay, someone took a picture and it's just a picture. And then explaining it with the Mio murder, and then using it now for just instant suspense. Like the monster is behind you. And now I want to talk about shadows because I am so glad we didn't do vampires again. Vampires are being way overdone in anime. They took an original monster that they gave it rules, weaknesses, strengths. It doppelgangs you, but it also has your memory, so you can't like trick them. You can't be like, where were we on that day in first grade? They're gonna know because they copy your memory. I
Mesopotamian culture.
any issues I have with the anime, not in the creatures. This is one of the coolest things this anime does is come up with really creepy monsters. It's a creature feature, and this sound. Anytime I hear, it's not like those cameras exist very much anymore, but anytime I hear that flash, I'm gonna be like, that's scary now. That is now scary, and I love it.
Where's my doppelganger?
right.
You guys have thoughts on the shadows you want to share?
I reflect 100% what you said. I love that their weakness is fairly mundane, and that their speed and agility, plus the idea that the thing you're looking at is just their projection to fake you out, to keep you from the real monster, even though that projection is monstrous in of itself, was super cool. And then like the different types of this monster, it's not just one thing. It's like there's a whole bunch of other things, and how they fit together is I'm excited to learn about. And then also that they have like a head, like master shadow that, mother. Yeah, this is really, really great implementation.
Mm-hmm. I love the idea that it's a different kind of dimensional entity, right? So like we always see the sci-fi presentation of, what would it be like for a four-dimensional creature to interact with a three-dimensional world, right? And even though these shadows can like balloon up and come into the, the volume of the location that they're in, so they're not like truly in a different number of dimensions. Simply knowing that a shadow is a two-dimensional projection onto a surface, the way that they reach in is like an angler fish, like dangling. They call it a lump of flesh over the shadow that looks like a human. And I love that. And just like you were saying, Jason, it's really fresh. It's really cool. It's really interesting. And just the fact that that thing isn't just an illusion either. It can have a gun, it can have a sword, it can have a butcher's knife, whatever it can copy. The power that these things have is insane. What they can duplicate and how easily they can duplicate it, and the fact that their projection, that lump of flesh and whatever else, could be metal, that they project out of their shadow to interact with you, is essentially no different than interacting with another human being. It can kill you, it can hurt you, it can stab you. And that you have to actually attack the shadow. That is so cool. Watching combat, like there's combat in so many anime, like it's a mainstay of it, and we've seen all kinds of combat between 2-3-dimensional fleshy objects. But to see one trying to strike around the projection and hit the shadow, that is cool. I haven't seen that before, and I love it. That is a really fun combat to watch. It's very different. Super cool.
Yeah, I wish I could have seen a sledgehammer go into another shadow character from a different anime.
Oh, which one is that?
What are you doing? This is the second time this morning. You're like, I'm gonna make this super obscure dig on some anime.
I don't know. Maybe if the shadow's name was like Kage or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Come on. Ranking of Kings. Come on. What's wrong with you guys?
Oh, that shadow. Yes. Wow. You know, I haven't even thought about that anime since we watched it.
Man, I guess rent free, man. Ugh.
Yeah.
The OP won an award. I want to go back to the shadow real quick, just because I love the thematic resonance of the Flash. Because what does the Flash create? It creates a shadow, which they use to duplicate, create more shadows. It's not only thematic, but the sound is creepy. And one of my favorite scenes is when Nagumo is talking to an old friend, and then it shows her feet. And she's purposely stepped forward onto the shadow, and the shadow is now bent around her foot, so she's not stepping on it. And just feel like that's so cool. That is such a that's something like Hollywood needs to get, because they're acting nice, they're friendly, but you look down and that shadow is bending around my foot. I'm in danger.
Yeah.
And I do, and along with the creepiness of it, I love that they then use it as a tool to attack, because they're like, when they do it, they have to freeze for a second or two.
Yeah,
that's when I'll strike.
That's your problem with the funeral, though, right? Is that we didn't see that freeze?
Well,
when everyone looks around, they would have noticed.
Yeah, every time they do the Flash, they get like this like weird digital light, sparkly aura around them. Even in the hallway that happened, but it didn't happen in the funeral. So I think either it's a visual cue for us, and the characters in the story don't see it, or only Shinpei can see it,
or it was done by a little girl named Shiori, and her parents, who are also shadows, stood in the way so no one could see.
But we immediately see Shiori in that scene.
Do we?
Yeah.
It's just standing there. Oh, but one thing I also wanted to touch on is the fact that these are shadow entities, right? Absence of light, darkness, right? But they use light to copy. Like they use the opposite of themselves to copy. It's subtle, but not subtle at the same time. It's like screaming, but it's really cool. I actually like that there's that dichotomy.
Are they also stronger in the dark? Because it didn't sound like, hey, because there's more light, we'll be able to stop them and pin their shadow down easier, because it make their shadow bigger. I think they said that in the tunnel with the one that was eating the mouse. Like, there's enough light that we can see its shadow. Hinting that if it was dark,
it doesn't make it stronger. It just makes it harder to hit.
It's stronger to me.
Harder to spot the line of
shadow. It doesn't increase its power level, but it does give it a battle advantage.
Like
Yes.
I care about power levels. That's him.
It's like Spaghetti hiding behind the plants. He's super powerful now because nobody sees him. There's your dated reference. It's Spaghetti. How can you forget about
I
Spaghetti?
don't know what spaghetti is.
Oh, come on. Tim and Eric, Spaghetti.
Anyways,
I don't think anyone's
I
seen
thought
as
I
much
was the
Tim
only
and
one
Eric
with
as
the
you.
weird.
Oh
Yeah, I
my
thought I was
God,
the only
Tim
one
and
with
Eric's
weird
amazing.
references.
At least yours was an anime that we've actually watched.
Come on. Okay, maybe they'll be converts. Go out and watch Tim and Eric. It's funny.
It's just Jason. You've become the old man with the grudge on this.
Get off my front lawn.
So of so many anime. Like if we watch a bad anime, you are going to hate on it till you die.
Yep. Nobody remembers anime like Jason either. Like, and it's the ones you hate.
100%.
Yep.
Like I barely
Like the
remember
digital
the one-
map of who likes who in.
Remember this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like burned into your mind.
The one I
'Cause,
hated
yeah.
was the schoolgirls who were schoolgirl agents, but there was like a lot of torture in it, like they were cutting off arms and stuff.
Oh,
for
yeah.
that one. But I
Yeah.
barely
Oh, yeah, that
remember
one
it,
was
and
awful, too.
I don't
Yeah.
feel the need to dunk on it every so often.
I don't dunk on ones we all universally hated. I only do the ones that I remember having fights with you guys and you disagree with me before I have to continually get my digs in order to make myself feel better.
Gotcha. That makes
Okay,
sense.
it's Shiori who he sees Shadow Shiori, and she runs away when the neighbor later shows up. So he starts looking for the slapping lady, big boobs, and he asked the same guy who had told him in the cafe earlier that he had asked about it. He asked this guy again. He's like, "Oh, weren't you already looking for her?" And he has already looked for probably again. I think it's going to be Shadow Uchiha or Shadow Shinpei who's looking for her, but I don't
Well,
know.
Shadow
Wasn't it-
Shinpei doesn't get shadowed until the
Yeah.
He
24th.
could have been shadowed at the
No.
funeral. But we thought it's Alan.
You can't.
Yeah.
No, because that would be a mainstay of the story because of where the time is. And the problem is that you can only be copied once.
Yeah, you
Mhm.
can be copied multiple times.
Nope.
Mm.
Nope.
Yeah.
That's called
That was
immunity.
that was
That's
a
called
rule that
immunity.
If you kill the shadow, you get immunity.
no, if you
Well, look at Mio.
We've
Once
never-
the shadow exists, it has a mission to kill you. It doesn't
All
just
right.
disappear again.
When we meet Shinpei's shadow, he walks up to him and copies him again, changing into his current clothes. He updates his data, and then goes, "Oh, he's also time looping." He
Are
didn't know
you
that
sure?
before. Yeah.
Because I thought that's where
did
Mio
update his
created him.
No, he was Shinpei already existed. He walked up in different clothes, and then flashes him again, updates his data, and goes, "Oh, he has a memory of time looping. This guy's time looping."
I don't
So
remember.
when was this Shinpei copied, I wonder then? Interesting. Because if it would have to have been
I thought it was right here when he's in Shiori's apartment or house.
Well,
but
that
they would have known time looping then. Because there was no reason for
Yeah.
him to
He'd
go
already
to-
done it.
Yeah.
He did mention it though, right when he copied him the second time, but he should have already known.
Yeah.
All right, we just cut. So we had to use a bathroom break, and we watched that scene again. Jeremy, what'd you see?
100% yes. Shiori copies him right now in this room. That's where that copy comes from, which is weird because it should have known he was
Should've known
skipping,
about the time loop.
but it didn't. Instead, what it said was the memories are weird. They're like all kind of mixed up, and they start and they stop.
Which makes sense because he's lived through the funeral, I think 3 times.
Yes.
Yeah, 3 times.
Right.
Mhm.
So that means
Well,
he's
they're
been
just-
copied 3 times.
No, not
meaning-
the funeral. Funeral is not where he was copied.
Yeah.
He was copied
it's
by
not.
Shiori in her house when he went upstairs.
Oh, okay. So yeah, he should have known about the looping. That's weird.
Well, the way he described it was the memory is weird. It's cutting off and restarting. So he didn't understand that it was looping. But when he updated, he's like, "Oh, this guy's looping."
Okay, so while we were off camera, like idiots, we started having an actual argument again about this copying and updating and the rules. So the rules are, as I understand it, you tell me how you understand it.
Mm.
You can be copied by shadows up until a shadow that has copied you has been killed, and then you can no longer be copied.
No.
Right.
No, because your premise allows for there to be more than one copy of a single person existing simultaneously.
Which we see, but you're saying that's actually a fluke because of something being wrong. So you
Yes.
go ahead and explain.
So if you can have two different shadows copy you at different times, and then both of them are existing simultaneously, and you kill one, but you don't kill the other, you're in a paradox. Does the other one melt? Do you gain immunity? Do you not
We
gain
see
immunity?
this happen in live.
We only see it with Ushio.
Right. And the copy is defective.
But that's what I'm saying. The only reason it happened is because Ushio's defective.
No. It's
Yes.
because the secondary data that was then copied again was defective.
No. Ushio is the one that's defective. The one that's still alive. The secondary one that was created, that was a totally fine shadow. It was evil. It wanted to kill her and everything.
But it
This
didn't take
Ushio
on
is
her form
called-
correctly. It couldn't coalesce into a proper form.
She was messed up.
No. If you watch the fight between Ryunosuke and the family, when they fight, that's what they do. They don't just maintain a human form. They go berserk. She started fighting. Like, she never had an opportunity or reason to just go into full camo mode to be a duplicate.
So your premise, you're skipping out on your premise. Your premise
My
is
premise
that
is
Shadow
Ushio is
Ushio.
an egg. She is not just a shadow. She may have started as a shadow, may have been corrupted or something, or she may be something entirely different. But she gets called an egg in the final episode, and she has the power to even like combat the mother of shadows. So she is special.
Your theory is that subject subverts the rule. Thus,
Yes.
when Ushio has two copies, that is not proving the rule. It is actually an exception.
Because if the shadows are that powerful that you can create multiple duplicates, then why do they have to duplicate different people? Why don't they just duplicate one person 10,000 times?
They actually explain that because you have to kill the original to be preserved, and it only is going to work for one of them.
What do you mean you have to? Okay.
So if I make two Tetsus, only the
Mm-hmm.
only the one who kills the original Tetsu is going to get to exist. Shadows are temporary unless they kill the originals.
Okay.
That's why he had to absorb Tetsu himself.
Sure, but you could still create a myriad. Like, all of these shadows could take on the same form, just wash over mankind, and as they kill somebody, duplicate the person they just killed, update themselves. They're now that person. Like, you wouldn't have to go through this process of slowly picking one person off from the herd at a time.
But the whole point is to stay in secret. So if you have three
Why?
Mios walking around,
if you have that much power and that much ability to just duplicate, I don't see why you would need to do body snatchers so slowly. You'd have different tactics that would be more effective.
I mean, they're literally needing humans to help them. They're not strong enough to do this on their own. I think if they were strong enough to just do what you're talking about, they would. I think they're limited.
I think they're a vampire type creature.
Right.
And they need, without human data, they can't survive. I think they end up in a state like what we end up seeing with those weird ones in the caves. I think they end up like that without sufficient updated data, which was humans. So that's why they're going about how they're going about things. But it is implied that there can only be one permanent copy of a human, and that once that copy's been made, if that copy then dies, then human can no longer be copied.
But you technically could make multiples, but only for a short period of time.
So the only multiple we see is the Ushio one. And if we take the egg thing off the table and we're going to go, this event shows what happens when we have multiple copies, we never see that second copy of Ushio present itself in a way that would be a non-corrupted copy. Sure, it went straight into battle. That's fine. But it's never explicitly stated that it could or could not go into that form. And because that's the only instance we have of 2 copies being on the screen with the original, I'm seeing that scene as that copy was unable to make a whole perfect copy because there was already a copy in existence, and that the data that it got was corrupted.
So that would imply you're saying that no, because if you tried to make a second copy, the second copy would be crazy.
Crazy, corrupted, yeah,
Just flawed.
yeah, and it wouldn't pass for a regular human.
So that also, I guess where this kind of came from is, could there have been 2 Shinpei shadows running around? No, from everything we've seen.
But we didn't know, or well,
but
yeah,
not,
you're right,
but not
'cause he
because
was, yeah.
Shinpei was immune.
Shinpei's never
Right.
been immune. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was immune because of his eye. That was my guess, because there was a point where Mio says, "Oh, wait. Okay, hold on. In the second loop, where Mio kills the police officer, and then she goes and stands over him, the new police officer duplicate says, "Are you going to copy him?" And she says, "No, he's all ready." But she doesn't finish. That's before he goes up into the neighbor's house, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how in
Troy,
that loop
Troy,
did he get copied?
Troy.
How did he get copied in that loop?
We've been assuming that Alan was copied at the funeral, and he almost definitely is, because we see Shadow Alan show up later in funeral attire.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But what if that scene, though, is supposed to be telling us that Shinpei is copied?
That would be cool. That would be cool.
That would also explain the not knowing about the time loop.
Yes, because that would have been before. Well, I mean, each loop.
He was still figuring it out
by the
on the second time, and by the third time he's on the dock.
Yeah, but that's still before the funeral, because they got to go home and dry off, get clothes, then come to the funeral.
Let's not worry about that part.
No.
Either way, no matter when Shinpei is copied by the Shinpei in the festival, that Shinpei should have already known, and for some reason doesn't figure it out until he copies the updates. But he had enough memories in there to figure out the time loop anyway. For some reason, probably just for plot reasons, so he'll say it out loud on screen. It happens at the festival.
Quick question in relation: do all the shadows share like a network? Like, do they all like network communicate?
I don't think so.
It's weird.
Sometimes it seems like they have the same information. Sometimes they're telling each other new information. So it's just kind of, and like sometimes they get, it seems like they have instructions from another source.
Mother.
Yeah. So I'm wondering.
So like when Tetsu is made a shadow of and he comes out, I think he has all of Mio's information up to that point, but once they split off, then they're no longer communicating through a network.
That makes
sense. So I think he knew everything she knew up to the point she created him, and now he's a solo independent entity and has to be told any further information. Even though he does ask, "Are you gonna?"
Yeah.
Yeah. So
which means he should have known.
He had to ask the question he should have known.
Didn't.
So maybe not even that.
Yeah, maybe not.
I did like that he had to like get his accent and his like mannerisms down right when he got copied. He was like, "Okay, I got it. All right, I'm good."
Yep. And he kind of overdoes it a bit when he's actually at the restaurant. Yep.
All right. We are somewhere in this story.
We're definitely talking about this story.
Okay, now you went to the apartment. Start searching for the. Oh, right. We were searching for the slap lady, and this all came up because he asked the motel owner, and the motel owner is like, "You're already searching for her."
Well, okay, so what was weird was that the hotel owner specifically called out the question. Like, he asked the question about like, have you seen the big boob lady, like the H cup lady? And that is super weird because he wasn't there to ask it in the first loop, yet it was asked already. So, and I still don't understand how that could possibly have happened. Although, yeah, because even that would have been after the funeral. So if it was him being copied at the funeral, it could have been Shadow Shinpei. You could have been right about that.
There is one other possibility, which is that we see a memory. We see the characters travel into a memory and watch the memory, but then things change in the memories because one of the mother has the ability to alter things in that memory.
Which is why I'm wondering, are they connected? Are they networked?
Well, we don't know what the other eye does. If this eye is this powerful, what does the red eye do? Maybe it could be doing something like what you're describing.
Yeah. So could in the future could he go back in a memory and look for H cup lady before he looks for H cup lady in both time loops somehow? There's a lot of possibilities, so I think we just gotta leave this as a question mark. We spent a lot of time on it, even though we got to explore the rules of the shadows. That was fun.
Yeah.
And Jason got to pee, so we're good.
That's the most important part.
We haven't even talked about how they can generate, chemicals and stuff.
Yeah, we're in episode 3. Okay, he goes back to the cafe. The sheriff shows up. He's upset about the fake call, but he's like, "Oh, by the way, here's Ushio's cell phone. She asked me to give it to you."
This felt like such a video game moment, like such a visual novel moment, where it's like, okay, you survived and you kept this guy alive,
and now
so
now
you get this key to get to the next point.
And then he talks with Sao, tells him everything that's been going on. And Sao is like, okay, so he doesn't tell him about the time looping yet, but he tells him about the shadows. So like, okay, there's doppelgangers. We need a code word. They come up with, if you say mountains, say Mesopotamia.
Yeah, Mesopotamian culture. Which doesn't even make sense, because if somebody's going to duplicate you and they get everything up to this point, they're going to know what to say.
They didn't know that.
They don't know that at this point. Which again is why I thought that was so clever. Is like, oh yeah, we know how to beat doppelgangers. You just use your memories or a secret code word. Oh yeah, well we're monsters who can get around that. So ha ha ha. They're caught in a rainstorm. He's given the necklace again. He tries to get into the phone and he's not able to. It's locked. Then it's time for the festival. It's July 24th. They go to the festival, and while there's a scene with Mio and a yukata, which is in every anime ever. Oh, I've never worn a yukata before. Really? This festival happens every year. No one ever gave you a yukata? Are they rare? I don't understand. It seems like everybody wears them to these festivals. How did you miss that for 14 years?
Yep.
Maybe what she has, she outgrew it, and now she doesn't have one.
She said she's never worn a yukata before.
That's true. She did say that.
I was like, what? That's like, I've never had toast, ever.
I've never eaten a cheeseburger as an American.
That wasn't meant to be a Chainsaw Man reference. It just became one. Sorry. All right. They go to the festival, and he sees Ushio at the festival. So he leaves his friends. He chases her all the way back to the beach. And this is Shadow Ushio. Now, because of the complications of this anime, and some characters even having multiple names, I've been referring to Shadow, like Shadow Mio or Shadow Shinpai, and I will continue to do that for them. When I say Ushio, I mean Shadow Ushio, and if I mean human Ushio, I will designate that as human Ushio, because most of the Ushio of this story is Shadow Ushio. So Ushio will be referring to the Shadow character, who we are now going to discuss. What did you guys think of Ushio?
I thought this was a fantastic twist on this world of shadows that we've established. And I think one of the more fascinating scenes is when Shinpei realizes that the shadow that is quote unquote cast by these things is where the monster really is. And he goes to touch her shadow. It is clear she doesn't realize that she is one. She doesn't know that she's a monster. And
she like giggles. It's like, that tickles. What did you do?
Well, and because of that complication, Shinpei makes a really interesting comment about if all the things that we would use to judge a person as a person are there, then what's the difference between this Ushio and the dead Ushio?
I think you're talking about a later scene though, when they're back in his bedroom.
I am, but I'm just saying,
Okay, okay.
this is why I find this character interesting, because it's not just a murderous monster that looks like Ushio. This monster, it for every respect, is Ushio. Not only same memories, same mannerisms, same interests, same affections, and at this point doesn't even realize that it's just a projection from a different spot.
And a big part of that is that the original Ushio also felt that way about her.
Right.
Like, yeah, you're the shadow, but you are, I mean, you're me as well, and I need to respect that.
And also, here's a question. If it takes a shadow to take your picture, or take your picture, scan you and then take your form, or scan you and then spawn a new form. Oh, wait, the only one we see spawning is
Mio.
Oh no, yeah, you're right. Mio does spawn it as well. No, so does little
Shiori.
girl Shiori.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so it seems that they all can do it.
Well, Ryunosuke seemed to think that they couldn't all do it. She was surprised that Mio could do it.
Oh. In any respect,
he was surprised.
When Ushio gets scanned, we don't see a second shadow there. It's just the one. And so I found that interesting, that it is this just a rogue shadow that's
a good point. Where did Ushio come from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I find this character extremely fascinating, because by all respects and all visual cues, besides her moments of battle, where she uses her hair like a helicopter blade,
Love it.
She's just a girl. She's a normal girl.
Yeah.
And that is a very interesting feeling to have while you're watching this character. So yeah, I liked it. I liked it a lot. I like the implications it brings, and I like the storytelling aspects.
I love how this character is not what I expected her to be, right? Like when we're first introduced to Ushio in like the cover art of the box and in the flashbacks and in the dream sequences and in how everybody else perceives her and the image, the photo of her at the funeral, right? I got real like wise, naive. I know those things are opposite of each other, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like the more toned down, reserved, quiet, mousy, like how I would describe Emilia, perhaps. So Troy, like when you said earlier, right, Mio was the Rem to her Emilia, I totally agree with that in the way the characters behave too. At least how I perceived her to behave until we finally get the reveal of this character and we start to see how she interacts. And she doesn't behave like that at all. She is a totally different character than what I expected. And at first it kind of was a little bit abrasive because I was like, this is so far from where I thought you were going with this character. I don't know if I like it. But the more that I saw how silly she was and how energetic and like rebellious, but always in a positive way, right? Like he'd tell her, you know, you need to hide. You're a monster, and people will freak out if they see you because you're supposed to be dead, right? But she just can't stop herself. She wants to have fun at the festival, and so she'll go
get a mask.
She'll go get a mask, thinking that that's actually gonna hide her. I mean, and she's even like in her swimming suit, sitting at like some play area with a bunch of little kids, like playing in the water because she just wants to be there, right? And how she's very impulsive and silly, and she was actually the first character that I really noticed the sort of the country accent coming across. Like it was present on the others, but it was more subtle. But with her, it's like just constantly there in the subtitles in how she says yeah and hi and things like that. And so I found her to be super, super entertaining. It was such a different flavor from all the other characters. And so when you compound that with the backstory that we get about her and the real Ushio, and you know how they survived, didn't survive, just how things happened, and who she is at this point in time, I think she's actually a pretty compelling character when it comes to, like, I would say at this point supporting role, but becoming a secondary main character because she's the only one that gets preserved in the loops. So yeah, I really like this character.
Yeah, this is a character I have no issue with. Not only is the human parts, the personality, stands out and makes you root for them, but then she also has the whole. But everyone I care about sees me as a monster.
Yeah.
and then yeah, the do I treat her as a human? Do I treat her as my friend? She has all the memories and all the personality, but she's not. My friend did die. That's some great social chemistries, whatever's going on there. It works for me. So Ushio is one of the most compelling parts of this whole anime.
I guess initially I thought it was more of a body snatchers, but it's really more of a clone in the situation of Ushio. It's like all the others are body snatchers, but Ushio's a clone.
Right.
Because they all still seem to retain a desire and a knowledge of who they really are, whereas she's so much. I don't know if this has something to do with Ushio being so pure, the real person, the human Ushio being so pure, or if it has something to do with this shadow being something special, being whatever the egg is that we learn she is later.
Because at first, in this scene where we first meet her, she has amnesia basically of her shadow existence. So you think, okay, maybe that's just it. But then when we find out, when we meet her the first time, she also had amnesia of being a shadow. This is the second time she's forgotten she's a shadow. And both times it's been like, okay, no, I'm on Team Human because I want to be. So, we do know she's the egg, but we just don't know what that means. All right. So he talks to her, realizes this is definitely not human Ushio. This is Shadow Ushio, but she is not aware of it at all. She even confesses her feelings for him, and then she wants to go to the festival, and he keeps trying to make her hide, and she's getting mad at him. He gets a phone call from Mio to come join him, and she answers the phone. So poor Mio is hearing her dead sister's voice on the phone. So yeah, he's like, "No, you stay hidden. I'm gonna go back." So he goes, and then we see Sao confess his feelings to Mio, and she rejects him as gently as she can. And then and Shinpei's there, and then Ushio shows up, like you guys said, in a mask, trying to console Sal, like, "Oh, it's okay, don't worry about it." And everyone's like, "Dead person."
I love how they drew the faces.
Just
like
immediately know who it is.
Right.
There's just no question.
Which is also, I mean, if you want to make a character endearing, this was a very good way to do it. Just showing that she's super well intentioned, does not think things through past 30 seconds ever.
Yep.
Yeah, and then, but I think we've already revealed this too. Shinpei grabs her and like starts crushing her arm, and we're like, okay, man, you don't have to be that mad at her. But it's Shadow Shinpei, and then we cut back in time to when Shinpei was going back to the group. He got attacked by Shadow Mio. Shadow Shinpei shows up, updates his data, goes on to go kill everybody. And Shinpei gets his arm broken by Shadow Mio. And then Big Chest Lady shows up with a shotgun and blasts Mio in the head. And they're purposely not killing Shinpei at this point because they know he can time loop. But yeah, so we have this quick fight between Mio and Nagumo, and Nagumo wins by shooting the Shadow. And this is the first time we see there is a way to beat these things. They are vulnerable where they really are, which is the Shadow.
Which was really it was strange at first because all of a sudden you'd like, oh man, did she miss? It's like, nope, she hit right on target, or he hit right on target. Right.
So yeah, now it's time to talk about Nagumo, who, before we get into it, frustrated me to no end as taking notes because they kept calling different names.
3 different names.
Yeah. So he has a writer pen name
too, like he, she. What? Who are we talking about? Which one?
And they do this with another character. The main villain also ends up with like 3 names. So I was going nuts trying to be like, it's Nagumo. No, it's Ryunosuke. No, it's Hizuru Minakata. Her real name is Hizuru Minakata. She has a split personality of her dead brother, Ryunosuke Minakata. No,
Yeah.
Hizuru. Okay,
Wait,
and
no.
then Hizuru Ryunosuke.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we always
His
get it backwards.
names are backwards.
Yep.
Her pen name is Nagumo.
No, not her. Is that her pen name or is that her pseudonym that she hides behind here? Right? Like she writes under her real name of
No, she writes
Hizuru,
under her pen
right?
name. Her pen name is Ryunosuke Nagumo. Nagumo Ryunosuke, whichever.
Wait, she writes under Ryunosuke Nagumo?
I'm not sure this is important.
We're just demonstrating how confusing it is.
It's very confusing. I'm gonna call her Nagumo, and then Ryunosuke as the brother. Those are the two parts you need to know. But
Okay.
mostly, I referred to her as Nagumo in my notes whenever the whoever's in the body did something. But because later they say if the hair is up, it's Ryunosuke. If the hair is down, it's Minakata. But Shinpei calls her Nagumo, so I'm calling her Nagumo. All right, so what do you guys think about Nagumo?
Fascinating character. Nagamo is the smart one that seems to be able to put together lore bits along with other information to come up with either conclusions or clues on things that are happening. Ryunosuke, I find just fascinating. We learn from the monster that he lives 2 seconds in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And just that statement in itself doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's not that they see 2 seconds into the future, it's that they're actually living there. So they're experiencing life 2 seconds before everyone else. How that works, we're not given any mechanics of it, but it leads to some really cool fight scenes and why Ryunosuke is so good at combat. Also, it doesn't seem that they tend to share information well with each other unless they're giving each other notes.
Yeah.
So
Which is the recordings on the phones. They leave each other voice memos.
right. So is just I find that part fascinating because now you have two personalities sharing the same body that don't have the same information.
Yep. That is cool.
Yeah. So also the hesitation to kill Ushio I found fascinating because there was none to begin with, and then like, okay, we'll give this a shot because I know I can kill it at a moment's notice. We'll just let this play out. You don't see that much in anime either. It's it's dangerous, we're gonna kill it, and like it's like 3 episodes of that, right? This was like, okay, let's see where this goes, and I like that they were like, okay, let's get on with the story. I also this character, so during this festival he's like, hey, I need the loop, but I can't, there's nothing I can do, you need to shoot me, and she's Ryunosuke's like, okay.
My last bullet. It's better work.
Right. So that yeah, there's a lot of mystery still around this character, which I'm really excited to learn about. So
Yeah. I love the fact that they tie this character to the mother Shadow, right? Because when we do learn a little bit about her backstory and how she found her brother all ripped up and everything, and she was screaming out "Haine," or I think that's how you pronounce it. So it seems like the mother killed her brother, but I do not understand how her brother wound up getting into her head.
Right,
because
is she
clearly
possessed or just crazy?
Right. Exactly, because he was clearly another real human being. He was not always inside of her mind. And so how did he get inside of her mind? Does this have something to do with how the shadows work and that it just messed up somehow? Like you were saying, Jason, the possibility of forearms being somehow linked to this. You know, I have a lot of questions, and I'm eager to see how they explain it, and I hope it's satisfying. I think it will be. But yeah, I love the fact that when you're talking about him living like 2 seconds in the future, imagine how horrible that must be, because we keep getting like flashes of Ryunosuke being shot in the face by bullets or hit by a knife stabbed over here or like something like that, and then he dodges it. So like, did he experience that and then come back and be like, okay, nope, got to move to the left because that really hurt? It's very cool.
Yeah, this is my favorite character, just which is has tough competition with the Shadow Ushio, just because they are so compelling. As crazy as they made me trying to make notes, I mean, there's one point where he tells her real name, and she goes, "My brother must have told you." And I'm like, "No, I just watched you tell him your brother is not around. What are you talking?
Who is your brother?"
Oh.
And then when they showed the brother, I was like, wait, is that two different people, but they look so similar that I've been thinking that they're the same person? They're
Oh.
twins? Nope.
Because so much is possible in this anime, you can't. It's hard to nail stuff down.
Yeah.
No, she's just very compelling. I love that she's a best-selling author who wrote books literally about her experience. That's a very Stephen King character thing to do. There's a lot of characters that do that.
One thing that kind of bugs me about this character is it seems like this is the first time she's coming back to the island in quite some time, but Ryunosuke seems really proficient in dealing with these shadows. Like, is this not the first time Ryunosuke's come back to the island to hunt them?
Well, from what I understand, he's been fighting the shadows elsewhere. Like, this is not the only place the shadows exist. They even talk about later how the shadows came here by way of some underwater place. So I don't know where else they are, but yeah.
That's interesting because I had this whole theory about the origin of the shadows.
I was under the impression that they
throws a wrench in.
Yeah, I was under the impression that they were originated here and this is where they live. Like, this is their breeding ground.
I think that this is where the mother is that produces them, but I wonder if some go away from the island for some reason.
Like they've been hunting the strays down.
Mm-hmm. Because the ones he describes, because he's shocked, he's like, that's weird. This Mio shadow can produce other shadows. I haven't seen that before. It's a new kind of shadow.
You're right.
So clearly you've been fighting them, but the ones you've been fighting are weaker. They're not as capable as these guys, which get close to mom, and you keep
getting the better of him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He convinces Shinpei convinces Nagamo to help him with Ryunosuke at this point, and they go up and things are bad. Things are going real bad. Basically, everyone's dead except for Mio. He sees Sao die from Shadow Sao, and there's literally just a pile of bodies on the ground behind them. Forearms, who we've mentioned a couple times, and I mean the number 4 arms. That's how many arms he has, not the section between his wrist and his elbow.
They're really cool forearms.
He's just a giant shadow guy. He's not in the form of anybody, but he's clearly like the muscle of these villains. And even when he gets hit with a shotgun, he can block it by creating duplicates of
manhole covers.
They're manhole covers.
Is that what they are?
Yeah.
That's right.
He makes the manhole covers and then can like duplicate the shotgun and
a
fire.
pistol.
He does the pistol later too. I don't think he does the pistol in this version.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, no.
And basically all the shadows start fusing and eating all these dead bodies, and they grab Ushio and they're like, "Hey, you're a shadow too." And she's like, "What? I'm a shadow." But then she's trying to save Mio because that is a big thing that Ushio cares about, is protecting Mio. Mio gets eaten, the dead bodies get eaten, and in the sky is this girl in a red.
It's Inuyasha.
She looks like Inuyasha. White hair, one eye. Also, forearms is where he says, "You have mother's eye. Why do you have that? Mother's in the sky." And they also call her Heine.
Yeah,
that's her other name. She's our main villain. We'll talk about her when we get to talk to her. And yeah, basically the whole island is now getting consumed by shadows. Everyone is just dying in mass, and it's literally hitting the ocean and spreading out. Basically, the villains have won, but before it's all over, Nagumo shoots Shinpei at his request and kills him and resets the loop. But as he's leaving, Heine sees. So every time he dies, like he turns into like an astral form, and then time travels back to the beginning. This time, Heine sees him and like literally looks at his spirit leaving, and then he hears Ushio's voice saying, "The power you have is not unlimited. You got to be careful." And this is when he shows up, and it's after he's been knocked into the water and saved by Mio, and he realizes every time he time loops back, he moves forward a little bit. So it's eventually he will reach the end if he keeps it. You don't get infinite loops. That's the point. And I was like, there you go. That's what you need in a time loop story. You got to create stakes.
Yeah. That's something we didn't get in ReZero, at least not yet. It'll probably come up later, but
Well,
He gets checkpointed.
yeah, the ReZero's thing is checkpoints, I think. Because
Right.
remember when Rem got erased and he was like, okay, I'll just go fix that. And he can't because the checkpoint moved past that point. I think ReZero handles it fine just as well.
Yeah,
in its own way.
yeah, what I'm talking about more is just the idea that is it infinite or not?
Right.
We don't know how many times he can loop. We don't know yet. But this one we know it's going to be horrible.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
Most common
then-
sound in ReZero.
So unsettling.
We start the next episode from Nagumo's point of view. As she gets off the ferry, she sees Shinpei go into the water. So she's in this loop. This is all permanent now because he's looped to a further point in time. She goes to the funeral and she's staking it out, and then an old friend sees her. And she's like, I don't remember you. And then she's like, no, I do remember you. I hate you.
I love this so much. You were so annoying. Oh, you're such full of jokes. I'm not joking, you jerk.
She's like, I can never get rid of you, and I still can't.
You won't
She
stop
talks
talking.
to Alan. We've mentioned Alan a few times, but Alan is Ushio and Mio's father and the one who helped raise Shinpei. And he talks to her. So we find out she used to frequent the diner and actually used to, because the cafe was so busy, the customers would help babysit Ushio and Mio for Alan, just because, small village. And so she used to read her stories to Ushio.
It sounds like she made up stories on the spot because when it showed a flash of what her story was, I don't think it was suitable for the kids.
But no, I thought she just wrote smut. I thought that was part of it.
Yes.
But even Alan says, though, getting one of her stories, so she's known as a writer on the island, too, even back then.
Mm-hmm.
All right. He tells her about how Ushio had marks on her neck. So she rips open the coffin and inspects the body, freaking everybody out. But then, and also she's talked to by Shiori's mother, who was her best friend growing up. And this is the scene where she puts her foot slightly forward into the shadow, and the shadow curves around it. She's like, "Oh, you're not my friend. You killed my friend. You jerk."
Yeah.
And then we cut to Shinpei coming here. He comes to the funeral after Nagumo has left, and he realizes Shiori's family is all shadows because they come up and talk to him. Or he had asked Shiori about shadows, and they come up to him like, "Why are you mentioning shadows to our kid? Like, what's going on? What's up with that?"
Then he
and
sees
he's like,
an ant crawl across their shadows.
"Yeah, that's right. That's a great
Yeah.
scene." And the shadow just like, "No, ant, stay off me." A little circle around the ant. Yeah, he realizes they're already all shadows, and so he's looking for Nagumo. And Alan gives him a message from her, contact information, but it's coded. But if code she used in her book, which he's a huge fan of, so he's able to decipher it. He calls. He talks to Nezu, who's that old fisherman dude who's totally down with killing shadows. That's like what he does.
Mm-hmm. He's immune.
He is immune.
Mm-hmm.
And he tests Shinpei by shooting his shadow and then says, okay, you can meet with Nagumo. And then he meets with Nagumo, tells her real name, and she's like, oh, my brother must have told you. And he kind of explains things. She's like, you must be time looping. He's like, I am time looping. That's really good.
I had a very similar cathartic experience to the scene that when Subaru gets that validation of someone knows that he's looping
Right.
and starts tearing up. I was like, oh, it's happening again. But I liked that this puzzle was not for him. It was for Nagamo's shadow, because only Nagamo's shadow would have known how to solve the puzzle.
Yeah.
And so this was a trap. This was all a trap
Yeah.
for Nagamo's shadow for when she gets copied.
Yep. Which is interesting too, because I don't know why, but it seems like she said, if they don't know who I am, they can't copy me. Like, I remember that being a point she brought up. Like, that's the reason why she's keeping her identity concealed and using fake names, is to stop the shadows from copying her. That was commented on a couple times.
So
Maybe
you have to
just
know
so
the
she
name.
didn't draw their interest.
Maybe. Yeah.
But if you copy them, then you get their memories, and if you get their
I can't
memories,
think of
then you
anything
get the
that would
name.
stop that.
So you'd have to know
Yeah.
the name to copy them? That's just super weird.
Yeah, it's super.
Mm-hmm.
We do see her save Alan from his own shadow, which is a great scene because she's like slamming it with the sledgehammer while he's pooping in the next stall, and he's like, "What is happening?"
Yeah, someone had a blowout.
Yeah, and she carries a sledgehammer in a briefcase. It's her weapon of choice. Anyway, yeah. So after they go to Shiori's house, and Ryunosuke goes in and battles Shiori's family, kills the parents, and then fights Shiori. But Shiori has more abilities than she's used to, and Shiori's able to escape. But Ryunosuke texts Nezu first, and so Nezu's waiting with a nail gun, and also Shinpei tackles Shiori, and they pin her down. And she starts taunting Shinpei like, "Oh yeah, I got Mio, and I'm gonna get everybody." And she admits to killing Lucio, and they kill Shiori with the sledgehammer.
I did like that part of the tactic was get as many of them to attack her as possible, so that their shadows would overlap, so that she would only need to strike once.
Yeah, that was good. One thing that confused me, and I still don't know how to read this yet, is the fact that Shiori said "Mama" when her mom was killed.
I think she's just putting on the act.
Is it just an act?
I think so.
Because there's even like
Technically,
the anime.
Shiori's her mother.
Yeah.
She's the mother of shadows.
Yes, you are correct. Yeah, but there's a comment made about it in the anime, if I remember correctly, where they're basically saying that she tried to recreate her family. And I don't know if this was just speculation on the part of Shinpei and others, or if this was something that there was more to this. But
maybe because she had Shiori's memories, she wanted
mm-hmm.
her family.
It just seemed really weird. Like, this Shiori is, even without the fact that it's Heine, there's something weird about her. Like, she's not acting like I would expect from others. Like, she tried to build a fake family around herself. It's just, I don't know. There's something weird there.
Well, that kind of fits in with what Heine's doing. I mean, it's literally what Heine's whole plan is: build her family, and then she also says, "Oh, we're going home." That is something she calls out when they pinned her down. We're going home after the festival. Mm-hmm. So that's their ultimate goal, but we don't know what that means yet.
Yeah.
All right. So they set a trap for Shadow Mio for that night when she's going to come to the house trying to kill Mio, and Shinpei takes over cooking. He comes in with Mio with a knife. He's like, "Ah!" Oh no, she's just trying to cook. She has bandages all over her fingers. He's like, "Oh no, I cook. Well, while he's cooking, Ushio appears, and Ushio, we had seen a scene of her show up on the beach. She got time looped with him. She got pulled into the loop. So this is the same Ushio from the last time loop. And so she's like, "Oh, you're making your curry," and he hides her and he gets her into his room and he feeds her and he's going to kill her. And this is that scene Jason was talking about where he's like, how is she not Ushio though? If she's not being evil and joining the shadows. Yeah, he touches the shadow and she acts like he touched her butt.
Yeah.
Um,
That tickles.
yeah, so he decides not to kill her, and then Mio comes and she's like, "Why do you have two plates? Why do you have two
And two
glasses? He's like,
spoons.
don't worry about it. I was really hungry." She's like, "No,
And
you were doing it."
And they're both empty when she comes back up to the room later. She's like, "You ate both?"
But he gets her to go away. But then Mio comes back, but this is Shadow Mio who had snuck in through the vents because they've changed the timeline. And he throws open the window curtain, and Ushio starts fighting Shadow Mio and gets her arm through her shadow cleaved in half and her arm destroyed. Well, then Nezu snipes the head off of Shadow Mio, and then he's able to stab the shadow and they kill it. And then Ryunosuke comes in. He's going to kill Ushio. He's like, no, don't. This one's on our side. And please heal her arm. And they're like, well, there's nothing we can do for her arm. So she just deletes her arm from existence.
Yeah.
She deletes the data and she's like, oh, yeah, that feels great now. She's not even like freaked out, like, I'm missing an arm. She's just like, yeah, that now the pain's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we find out a little bit. So I want to comment on the shadows and some of the theories I have is that we're not using like magical or fantastical terms. We're using technological terms, rendering,
Deleting.
data,
Copying.
deleting, copying, yeah, updating. Like I keep waiting for someone to pull off a VR headset and be like, "This game is amazing!" Like, because even the big reveal at the end of episode 12 is you are rendering the reality in real time with your eye, and the flash the shadows make is not a natural sound made by technology. We find out this is all from a goddess, but man, I feel like there's a twist coming, or maybe that's just a way they're doing it. I'm hoping it's a twist, but it might not be. I can't imagine them pulling off a VR headset and being a twist.
Sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, right? So what was the origin of Hiroko? We don't really know where she came from or how she was created.
And also when the shadows need to update, when they're having issues, the image scrambles like statically, not and in blocks too. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Keep going. They kill Mio. Oh, and then he takes her to Ushio to the beach, and they meet Sal, and they give her Ushio's phone, and she's able to get into it, and they take the video, and the video is human Ushio explaining what's happened with Shadow Ushio. Basically, human Ushio had found Shadow Ushio, and they were going to attack each other at first because they both thought the other one was a shadow, and then they decided to team up to help Shiori, who'd been mentioning her own doppelganger. And they go up to the old clinic. That's really important. A shadow copies Ushio again, so now there's 3 Ushios. But the good Shadow Ushio manages to defeat it and realizes, oh, I'm a shadow and I have shadow abilities, so she's able to fight. But then Shadow Ushio also reveals I'm temporary because if you don't die, I'm not permanent. But she never eats her, so it's just dying. You don't have to eat them. They just have to die. That's a good
point. That's really weird.
Because she is permanent.
So you don't even have to make a destructive copy.
But she was having a problem after the arm thing. She was having a problem keeping data because the original copy was still in existence. She hadn't.
But that would happen to any permanent shadow.
Wait,
I was under the impression in order to be permanent shadow, you had to poof the original body.
I thought you just couldn't heal without something to update on, even if you are permanent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was only under the impression that she needed the original body to just heal that wound by re-uploading the data, like as if that part of that sector got damaged, and so somehow by taking another snapshot, you're repairing the hardware of the sector as
Right.
well as the data, which is kind of weird.
Like
but-
what she did with her foot at the clinic. Remember, her foot got damaged because
Right.
her shadow got
Takes another
attacked,
snapshot.
and so to fix her foot, she takes another snapshot of the human Ushio.
Hmm.
So I guess then
I must just be forgetting it, but was this
it-
this was in the flashback? Is that where it was?
Yeah. It's in the flashback
okay.
at the clinic.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yes.
So I guess
exactly.
the question of is this Ushio permanent or not has not been answered, because they only say you'd have to die for me to become permanent, but they don't say it's not clear if that means I have to eat you or delete you, or literally just physically die is enough. We actually don't know.
I thought that was a problem for her because when they found out that Ushio's corpse was still in existence, like some things came together. But because we're under the impression that she was cremated and she's and we find out that she was body switched. So
Yeah, my impression was entirely the injury to the arm. And so the fact that there was a corpse there would mean that she could heal her arm. And so it was important to get that body so that she could copy the arm and fix herself.
Right.
But someone said
I
that
was assuming she was permanent.
But someone said, I don't remember who or where exactly, but I remember specifically that shadows could heal their projections instantly.
If the projection was the only thing damaged.
Oh, that's right. The shadow was cut, not the projection. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
This gives Ushio all her memories and powers back. Watching the video, now she remembers. Oh yeah, I totally am the shadow.
Easy amnesia solution.
Yeah.
Right.
And then she's like, "Oh, and I also have the memory of when human Ushio died. I'm gonna take you into the memory." And she's able. That's one of her powers. Hey, let's go watch this memory. So they do. I do want to call out little kid pooping on the beach is like the most authentic thing ever.
Right?
So real. I didn't poop. It's just coming out a little bit.
Memory is flooding back. Okay, fine. Let's get out of the water.
Okay, I gotta carry. Okay, I'm carrying you. We're going fast. Squeeze. That's real life. All right. So basically, what happens though is Shiori is pulled into the water by Shadow Shiori and Ushio, who's wearing Shadow Ushio as her necklace, which is why the real necklace was in Mio's possession, or was able to be given to Shinpei. She can take the form of that necklace. So they dive into the water and they battle Shadow Shiori, who basically wins. She and human Ushio sacrifices herself trying to save them, but it doesn't work. Shadow Ushio gets almost completely absorbed and destroyed, and gets sent down to the bottom as well. And Shiori also gets deleted. So now Shadow Shiori comes up, and they get human Ushio's body, and that sets up everything that we had. And then eventually, Shadow Ushio was able to regenerate to her full form, but that's why her memories were spotty again. We don't know why her memories were spotty in the first place. Again, she is defective for some reason.
Mm-hmm. Traitor.
Yeah. However, when they're getting ready to leave the memory, Shadow Shiori turns into Heine and grabs Shinpei by the arm, and then when they exit the memory, his arm is marked with a shadow handprint.
Mm-hmm.
And that freaked him out because he was like, "Hey, I thought we were just watching a
Right.
Why
And
is
that
this thing
wasn't-
interacting with me?"
And she's like, that wasn't memory. I also loved, they couldn't see how Shiori got into the water because none of the Ushio didn't see. So and it's just like, I can only show you my memory. It wasn't just editing for story's sake.
That was cool.
And also, he ends up with a mark on his arm that not only persists out of this memory, it preserves past this loop into the next loop.
Yeah.
They decided to go to the old abandoned clinic that was Sal's father's old clinic, and investigate that because that is where human Ushio had gone.
Sal comes in a full catcher outfit with a baseball bat. I love it.
Yep. And Shinpei has a nail gun. And while they're investigating, they find some old chemicals. It's like mercury or that.
Mercury chloride.
Yep.
Mhm.
And old documents, but what they really find is a bizarre wooden statue of a goddess who's not the god of the island. There's a god of the island that everyone, the god of luck and fishing that everyone prays to. Just old superstition. But this one is bizarre looking and pregnant, and they do a Google search on their phone, and it's Haruko, the goddess.
Well, what's weird is that Haruko, if I remember correctly, was the name of the goddess or god, whatever it was, that they actually
have
did
mentioned
worship.
Haruko before.
Yeah,
At this point,
and they even described that one of the trademarks of Haruko is having that fish under its arm, right? But they showed the other one, like you said, and it's just like it looked like some fisherman dude, right? This one has the fish under her arm too, so like that's really weird. I want more information about what the correlation is between these two deities.
Mm-hmm. He also finds a crack in the wall, and so they have Ushio take shadow form and go inside, and then flash so she can see inside. And it's basically the wall is actually a door. She comes back, and then she flashes the statue, and there's a key inside it, so she's able to copy the key, and they open the door and they go into this underground labyrinth where they fight a shadow baby. That attacks
With half
No
a head.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's these shadow babies that have half heads that they basically just don't have any other form yet. And
I think he
They
called
kill-
them wild later. The forearm
yeah,
guy.
wild shadows.
Wilds.
They killed this first one that was trying to eat a mouse. And then they go further on, and she's sensing a really strong shadow presence in these caves. And they eventually reach these caves, and these shadow babies attack them. Meanwhile, Nagumo and Nezu enter the sewer, which ends up connected to all this. They run into this dead end where there's these bars, and they're like, yeah, it's made just so only a shadow could pass through this, right?
Because a lot of it is from the war that ends
Yeah.
up meeting up with Natural Cave.
Mm-hmm.
Then Mio sees Shiori, and is basically indicating for who's supposed to be dead at this point, and is indicating go into the sewer, and she gets the cop Tetsu to go down with her. I also skipped over where a detective came up and talked to her, but it's not important other than the detective is dead now. She's wandering through the sewers now with Tetsu following the shadow Shiori. They get to
I'll tell
the
Erica
same.
that you were heroic.
They get to the same bars, and Shiori flashes the bars with her flashing, and they disappear. So now they go through, and then Nezu and Nagumo, who were watching all this, also go through the bars. So everyone's in the cave system. In the cave system, Shinpei comes across. They come across a bunch of coral, but it's all underwater coral that's somehow surviving outside of the water, and they're like, oh, they're all shadows. That was where my theory of where the shadows came from, what was stemming from, forgetting that Nagumo was hunting them off island. That the shadows were just like maybe a form of sea life that were just animals and copying coral, and then for some reason the sea left this area and they just got left behind, and then somehow a human wandered in and they created a human, and once a human was created, now there's humans' feelings mixed with this animal's instinct, and now we have this whole species of shadow monsters.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the coral is important. It's not just, hey, randomly there's shadow corals. I feel like this is a big part of the origin story, that all these corals got left behind in this formerly, because they had to be underwater at some point, had to be in the ocean when they were created, and now there's no water there.
Yeah.
I feel like that's going to be key.
I think you got something there. Mm-hmm.
All right, but then we get our big twist is Tokiko, who we haven't really talked about, but she's So's sister and had gone to the festival with them and had been dead. Got killed. She appears with two shadows, and they're like, "Oh, Tokiko's shadow," and they shoot her shadow with the nail gun, and she's like, "I'm human. I help the shadows." And guys, they did an anime trope that I like. The closed eyes and then open eyes, and I was like, "Oh, main villain," because the eyes are closed.
Yep.
And she's just a patsy, but she's like, "Okay, they capture Shadow Ushio," and she's like, if you don't tell Mio, I will take you. I want you to meet Haruko. I'll take you to the god Haruko. So they go to meet Haruko. So we basically come to our 2-episode finale where everyone's in the cave. Nagumo and Nezu are fighting Four Arms and Shadow Shiori. Nezu gets killed. Nagumo gets hit, or Ryunosuke gets hit in the liver, so he's dying. Tetsu ends up finding them and helping them because he got lost from Mio, who gets captured by Four Arms. But the big thing is Shinpei, Sao, and Ushio get brought before Haruko, who is also Heine, who is also Shadow Shiori.
We find out Tetsu has no business being a cop.
I know.
Yeah.
Just-
We already
goes
knew.
down
He
so
rides a
quick.
bike. Come on.
I dropped my
You're not-
gun. I'm sorry.
You're not chasing down criminals on your 2 pedals. Okay, it doesn't matter. What matters though is that Haruko is the goddess. Her last form was Heine, and then she needed to update that form because she's growing weak and Shiori. So's family has been feeding the shadows, especially her, to keep her strength. She doesn't even have enough strength to use her legs anymore, so they have to bring bodies. And every time anyone on the island dies, the body is brought down to her to be fed upon. Sue was not told about this. This is why I think Sue's in for bigger character stuff, is that his family literally decided, we can't trust you with the secret and the burden of our horrible family secret. But we also learned the reason they're doing this is because his mother was sick and they killed her, made a
So
shadow
horrible.
version of her
Yes.
to preserve her. And she's like, no, it counts. You're treating Ushio like the real Ushio. This totally is legit. And everyone else was like, no, you killed your mom.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's also a nurse there. So when Ushio resist, they have this cool big fight. One-armed Ushio, who then copies. They brought down coffins to feed upon, and one of them is Ushio. So now she has the body to create the data, gets her arm back, battles the nurse, who turns into a giant monster and kills her.
Shadow Hulk.
But Four Arms shows up because Shinpei is about to kill Heine, and his fingers get chopped off with the nail gun. And Four Arms is there, and he's like, and he grabs him, and he's like, I gotta hold on to you till the festival because we don't want you time looping. And then Nagumo shows up and shoots Four Arms enough for Shinpei to get away, but she's out of bullets and can't kill Shinpei. And Four Arms like, haha, that was close. I killed Nagumo now though, so you're not dying. And then Shinpei's like, actually, I took the poison, the mercury chloride.
Yep.
Yeah, and I drank it all, even though you only need a sip. I drank all of it. I'm gonna die. And he's like, dang it! And so he time loops. Ushio was being corrupted by the mother goddess, but had started to fight back and regenerate, and actually was hurting her. So she gets pulled back into the time loop. This time, at the end of the episode 12, they are standing in front of Nagumo, telling her real name, with the point where Shinpei had gained her trust. And she's like, you're a time looper. He's like, I am a time looper, and I just got back, and I brought Ushio with me, and that's the end of where we have stopped. Okay. Any last thoughts on the finale or the midpoint finale?
I am so invested, and I see some problems that you're talking about, Troy, with characters that, when it comes to time looping stories, especially when Four Arms has Mio, and then crushes her. It's like there's very little emotional attachment to that scene except for Shinpei's reaction, because we know, he just needs to die and reboot. Interesting factoid we find out here. He goes, not only are you rendering this timeline real time with that eye of yours, but you don't have to die to manipulate time. You just have to. That's the only way you've been able to find out how to do it so far. And so the fact that he's got even more power than we're let on is pretty interesting. I'm really looking forward to that. But I think the story does suffer as far as character attachment because stakes don't. Besides the stake of let's keep this guy alive so he can't loop, there's not a really big stake. I think I'm just more enthralled with not only the story but also the uncovering of the mystery, and like each mystery creates 2 or 3 new interesting mysteries. And I'm getting now that I'm thinking about it, I'm getting a very interesting or very similar feeling that I did to that old show Lost, where it was a black box, and as soon as you open the black box, there's 4 more black boxes in there that you're trying to open to then find out more black. And that can lead to its own problem where you build up so many black boxes that the final black box, if you ever open it, it's never going to be satisfying.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping we don't go down that road.
That is a great point, but I'm so depressed that you referred to Lost as that old show. You're right. But, oh my god.
Right?
Yeah.
It was like 20 years ago.
Oh god. All right, Jeremy.
Yep.
You ready for final reviews, or do you have any thoughts?
I just had one other thought, and that was I was a little bit confused by Heine having blood transfusions constantly.
Yeah.
Like, that's not how these things eat. So that's weird.
That was weird.
Mm-hmm.
But she is different than all the other shadows too. We know that.
And also,
That's
if
true.
she's so weak, why was she parading as Shiori?
She's not weak.
Yeah.
Well, Shiori is more like a projection of her.
Or maybe she was getting the transfusion because she got injured by Nagamu when she got away.
Maybe that would make
Right.
sense, but I still don't understand how
Anyways.
the transfusion would heal it. So
I
it's
think
just weird.
I think we'll find out.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go to final scores. Jeremy, why don't you go first?
I love it. I want more of this. 5 out of 5. Take me down the different story paths and show me what coulda, shoulda, woulda, coulda been, and how we're gonna die this time.
All right, Jason.
I'm so enthralled. I'm so excited to see what's next. Again, one of the great things that you can tell a great story is if it gets you thinking when you're not watching it. I know, as you mentioned, there's been a couple people, including yourself, that's not happening for, but for me it is. So, like, for me, this is a 5 so far. So I'm very excited for season 2.
Core 2, season 1.
Or yeah,
It's a 4 for me. I told you it was gonna be a high number. It's really good. I was like, this is gonna be a 5. I haven't even hit play yet. I know this is a 5, and I'm watching. I'm like, not a 5. I wanted it to be a 5. I don't even think it's the time looping. I really don't. That makes sense, and it might be. I could be wrong. I just, like I said, it's a little bit flat on a lot of its characters for me. But the story, there's so much great stuff happening there, even though I'm not getting what I usually want out of a story, like character growth and stuff like that, and emotional themes. I'm still having a good time with it, so I'm excited to go further, and I'm hoping it gets me what I want. I want it to be a 5. I really do.
Well, I remember first season, first half, ReZero, you also gave that a 4. So
I did.
we'll see what happens.
Maybe it is. Maybe it's time loop. Maybe I don't love it as much as I think I do. I do love time loops.
I think you
right.
like the idea of time loops. You just don't like the people in the time loop.
Yeah.
I
The characters are boring.
Guys, I love Groundhog's Day. All right. Our next anime is this. We're just watching the rest of it. You have comments. You have comments on the first half. Reach out to us on our Twitter at Baka Podcast, or our website, theanimebakaclub.com, has a contact us page. Or, wherever you found this, just leave a comment. YouTube's comments get to us. Other comments get to us. Reviews are great as well.
Yeah.
Hey, look, the more people we get to listen, the more people you have to talk with to tell us why we're wrong.
Yeah.
Win-win for everybody. No, thank you all so much for the interactions we've been seeing. We do really appreciate those. And I think it's time for us to say goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
See you in the next loop.
Sayonara.